Hi, Cindy, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Sound great.
Okay, thank you. I'll be back on in just a minute.
All right, thanks. Hi, Rick. Do you want to test your audio?
Hi, can you hear me?
Perfect. All right. Do you want to go ahead and mute yourself and turn off your camera until the item's called? Thank you.
All right, we're seeing folks come on here, getting close to our 6 o'clock start. I'll look and see if our council's all joined us. We're just about there, yes, and our city manager, and I'll Once we get to 6, I'll look to our city clerk and see where we are.
I am ready to start when you are.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Cindy. So I'd like to welcome folks to the City of St. Helena regular city council meeting, Tuesday, December 14th, 2021. And Cindy, will you take us into the remote access and Spanish language interpretation, please?
Sure. I will share my screen. Participating, you would dial 669-900-6833 at the prompt. You would enter 823-8403-7982. You would press pound, and during public comment, you would press *9 to speak. And I think, so tonight's meeting will have live Spanish interpretation. To access the interpretation, you will need to use the Zoom application from either your cell phone, tablet, or computer. Instructions on how to use the Zoom app are listed in English and Spanish on the agenda posted on the city's website. Once you join the meeting from the Zoom application, you will see a small globe at the bottom or top of the screen. Click on the globe and you will be able to access the live interpretation. Julie and Paul are the interpreters this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll now move on to our Pledge of Allegiance. If folks mute your microphones and place your hand on your heart and follow with me. Allegiance, flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll now move to our adoption of the agenda. One thing I want to note for folks is that after discussion in terms of the item 9.13 that was on consent related to Hall, Vineland, Vista, we will have a continuance as well. We will discuss that meeting, that item at the end of the consent calendar, but then we will also continue to the meeting to continue taking community comment on it past this meeting tonight. So I just wanted to make that note and look to Cindy to see if there were any other changes to the agenda.
So just to be clear for the record, that item will not be discussed this evening, but continued to a date certain?
I'll look to Ethan how he wants to describe how we're going to proceed with that.
So thank you, Mayor. So on the agenda, we did include that item on consent with an indication after receiving several public comments that we would hear the item under old business. I think the council has the discretion if we want to receive, since I believe there are likely people on the call this evening who want to speak, the council could move it to earlier in the meeting and receive public comment on it. But with the understanding, obviously the council will have to act on this, but with the understanding that we would vote on a continuance to a later date certain. So to be clear, we are pulling it. It's a question of where you want to place it for public discussion, and then we would decide at that point to continue to a later date, and you could receive public comment at that point.
Okay, well, we'll go. My thought is to have that discussion directly after the consent calendar. I don't know if there's support on the council or any objection to that. And seeing none, so we'll proceed that way. And if there's no other changes, I'll take a motion.
Wait. I have another change.
Gotcha.
So on old business item 11.1 will be heard after new business item 12.3. That is the only other change that I have.
11.1
And
will be heard, excuse me.
after 12.3.
Okay.
And are you going to take public comment on 9.13 at the end of consent, or are you going to wait until
We'll take it at
old
the,
business?
we'll take it at the, we'll move that old business to right after the consent calendar.
Okay.
So with that, we'll go to our next item here, which is taking a motion on that adoption of the agenda. If there's a motion
As amended?
as amended,
So moved as amended.
and a second,
I'll second.
and roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Councilmember Hall,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Ito,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. And it is a busy agenda tonight, so we'll try to keep focused as we move forward. Our next item here is public forum. This is where members of the public are entitled to speak on matters of municipal concern not on the agenda. Each person's comments are limited to 4 minutes, and each person is entitled to speak on any non-agendized item only once at any meeting. Is there any public comment here at this point on anything not on this evening's agenda?
I'm seeing none.
Okay, very well. Thank you. We'll move forward from public comment and we'll move to reports by staff and city council, future agenda items and AB 1234 reports. I'll move first with our staff. I'll go to our city attorney. And looking for a report out on closed session.
Thank you, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. As you know, immediately prior to this meeting, we had a closed session where we discussed 3 items. One was existing litigation with Picasso Incorporated. One was potential initiation of litigation, and one was existing litigation regarding the Vineland Vista matter, and we have no reportable action from any of those items. And that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move to our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 3 items to update you on tonight. First, at our next regular council meeting that's scheduled for January 11th, 2022, we plan a Vine Trail check-in. We've received a lot of questions about the Vine Trail project, and our plan is to update the council on the route options that were studied and present those to you for a discussion. We also want to share with you the stakeholder outreach that's been performed to date and talk to you about potential additional outreach options. So that's scheduled for January 11th. Secondly, you may have heard in the news that the governor has announced a new statewide mandate for indoor mask requirements. That takes effect tomorrow. It runs through January 15th. These rules already apply in Napa County. So the way we operate today is the way you will operate tomorrow. But it does change the rules in certain counties in California. And finally, we're nearing the end of the year. It's been another tough year, particularly because of the drought. I want to say a warm thank you to our staff for all their hard work this year, our city attorney, who's been very busy, and of course, our city council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to our.
Thank you, and to you also.
Thank you. And we'll move to our finance director.
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Very well. Our city clerk, Ms. Chafopoulos,
Nothing to report.
Public Works.
Just to say that we've gotten a lot of rain here in the last few days, and it'll continue. So we look forward to more rain, and hopefully we'll have some resolution to the drought.
Great, thank you. We'll be looking forward to hearing sort of data on where our volumes are. So thanks for keeping an eye on that. And we'll move to our planning and building.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing to report.
And we'll move to our council members. Councilmember Hall.
Just one quick update. We had our Parks and Rec Commission meeting last night where we spent quite a bit of time reaffirming the work of some of our subcommittees, and we actually established a new subcommittee which will be focused on establishing a parks master plan for the city. So I'm looking forward to that work coming forward over the next year to 2 years. I guess we'll see how long it takes, but I think it'll be a good effort. We're looking forward to it, and that's it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And Councilmember Chateau.
Thank you. I just had a couple things I wanted to mention. One, I was so grateful with the St. Helena Foundation doing the vaccine clinic for the kids under 12. That happened at the primary school. It was so positive. There were beautiful cupcakes for all of the kids. There were games on the table. I want everybody to know in the community, the shots did not hurt for the kids. They just were so happy after and relieved. And the foundation, the St. Helena Hospital Foundation, continues to offer those shots at free clinics, and they really make it such a nice, positive experience. I couldn't be more grateful for them. The other thing I wanted to report on is Vice Mayor Doreen and Miss Nixon and I had the pleasure of going to the high school to present on the Youth Council Rep program. So we went there to recruit and tell all the high schoolers about the program and get them hopefully to sign up. It was a very positive experience. Miss Nixon made it a very professional and just well done day where Vice Mayor Doreen and I could each take different shifts and come in. And I would say it was just a very positive experience. And I'm excited for that future work and how that turns out. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was just last night, I went to a vaping presentation by our school resource officer, Officer Brown. Also Calistoga Schools, they have a resource officer who was there. Napa County was there, and also Up Valley Family Centers, because vaping is an issue within our schools and with our youth. So I learned about it. I am concerned about it because it's on the rise. It's more of a problem now after the pandemic. The vaping products have a lot of chemicals. You can see the little devices thrown around in the environment. It's not good. So I just was grateful to hear this concentrated effort at trying to reduce the numbers of kids accessing the vaping materials and using them in our community. And there will be more parent workshops provided.
Yeah, but it's gonna.
Thank you. Thank you for presenting those.
To me, so.
Oh, there we go. I think we had a mute issue. Thank you. And then we'll look to Councilmember Hardy.
Thank you. I have an agenda item to propose. I'd like to move that we place on our agenda January 25th, the discussion of the process for converting back to a mayor appointed by the council from the current elected position, and possible action on that item.
That's something that I would support.
Is that a
I do
second?
too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, very good. That is a motion. I'd like that to be a date certain, and I have so moved.
So we have a second, and is that a roll call, Mr. Presswich?
Sure. We'll have the
Councilmember
city
Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doreen,
Yes.
Councilmember Chateau,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Okay, very well. Any,
So just for future reference, are we going to have motions? Past practice has been simply a consent under our rules. I think it takes too much time actually to have a motion for every time there's a council request. So I don't know how we want to proceed. We may want to look into that.
I think that's worth making sure we have a policy or practice for consistency. So support that discussion as well.
Well, it's a time-sensitive question that I brought up, and I've had the past experience of a council supporting an agenda item for a date that then didn't happen. So unless we have a way of making these decisions in a simple manner where the scheduling is reliable and predictable, when the date matters, I will continue to make a motion.
Very good. So we'll move now to
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. I
Vice Mayor-
agree with that observation.
Vice Mayor Doring.
No,
Okay, well, I'll be very brief. I just want to make a few comments there. First, expressing gratitude, continued gratitude to our community, to our city council and our city staff for another incredible year of staying focused through a lot of challenges. I want to wish everyone a happy holiday. It's been a challenging year, but a rewarding year. And I want to encourage everyone to keep working forward together in a positive way and to have a happy, safe, peaceful, and joyous holiday. I want to think about in January, talking about our fire safe councils and the work that we want to do in our community in terms of protecting ourselves from upcoming wildfire seasons. The fire safe councils have done an excellent job really tying things together. And so I'm going to be encouraging us to look at bringing them on again in January to help our community understand how they operate. In the meantime, in our community, Chris Warner and Jeff Farmer have been leads on the Fire Safe Council and have been doing a great job in sort of organizing things that tie into our neighborhood networks and defensible space and home hardening and all those things that we're working on. So if folks want to get in touch with Chris Warner or Jeff Farmer over the holidays, feel free to do so. They've let me know that that's okay, but we can do a little more structured approach in January. I'll just put this out quickly. Chris Warner's number, 415-309-9572. And Jeff Farmer, take perhaps text better, but is at 707-227-8371. Anybody who's interested in getting involved in our fire safe councils, those discussions can also help with other emergency preparations that might include, wet weather issues as well, because it's all about that sort of building neighborhood response. So I just want to put that out there. And then again, we're still in this COVID thing. So the masking, the social distancing, the hand washing, those basic fundamentals, let's keep those going, because then we keep the curve down and our healthcare workers are able to better manage. So thank you, everybody. Those are my comments. And now we're going to go into our presentations and public recognitions. And this is a recognition of our former Parks and Recreation Director, Andre Pichly. And I'm seeing Andre with us. Thanks for joining us. And I'm going to pass this to Mark Prestwich.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Andre, for joining us at our virtual podium. If we were in a non-COVID environment, we'd have you walking to the front of the room. We are tonight saying thank you for your service to the city of St. Helena. We're so grateful for the 4.5 years that you served. And your continuing joke that I don't have seniority on you is now over as of, I think, maybe midnight tonight. So no more words of that. You've left us with a legacy of enhanced parks programming and events for the city, home for the holidays, bicycle events. We know you've done planning for city staff as well and had a lot of excitement about opening day each year. Opening day for probably a lot of sports, it's fair to say. I have affectionately referred to you as the chief instigator of fun privately because I think it fits the title. We've enjoyed working with you. We're going to miss you. We want to congratulate you on your new leadership role as the leader of your new Parks District that you're working with. And your friends in St. Helena have sent you a gift. And we'd like you to open that today in front of us because we don't want you to forget us on your career journey as you move to that next step. So we'll turn it over to you, Andre, now for that unwrapping.
be careful.
I think I should be.
Put on your mask.
First off, it's good to see everybody. I really do appreciate it, and miss you all. It's not
Sorry, it's
meow.
picked up pretty good.
Yeah, it's not meowing, so I think we're okay. Oh, wow.
You're gonna have to hold it up, Andre.
I am gonna have to hold it up. I made it turn the lights up a little bit here too. This is very cool. Hang on, let's get the lights on. So if you can see it, it
Take it out of the
appears
bag.
it's out of the bag. Oh, no, it's out of the bag.
Oh,
Bag's
okay.
right here. Yeah. But it's a collage of a lot of the pictures from my time in St. Helena. And the best part about it is the pictures, most of the pictures have you guys in them. So I really appreciate it. And I've got so many fond memories of all of the events and all the time working with people. It's really been probably one of the most rewarding experiences I've had in my 30 plus years in the profession. So everybody in St. Helena, you know, the thing about this is it doesn't really capture even some of the members of the community that I would talk to out at adult softball and bocce, and the moms and dads who would bring their kids over to martial arts to the Redwood Room behind our office. And you know, those are people I'm going to miss too. And especially, I mean, the executive team, you guys were all great. You guys are my buddies, and Amalia and Stephanie were part of the team, and Danny and Mel, and I could go on and on and on. So it's nice to leave on your own terms, but what I'm leaving behind is really is a sense of family and some really good work. And I hope I've left the Parks and Recreation Department in better shape than I found it. And looking forward to hearing whoever takes the helm for that they're able to take it to the next level and really deliver to the great people in St. Helena. So thank you very much. I appreciate this.
Thank you. Andre, I just want to say personally, as the council's rep on the Parks and Rec Commission, you know, there's a lot of good folks there. But I think, you know, we wouldn't really be able to function without your consistency, without your skill, your knowledge, and your humor. It's always been terrific. It's really been the core of that commission. We're definitely going to miss you. And I just wanted to say thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you, Eric.
Very good. Well, thank you. And thank you, Andre. Thank you for what you brought to our community, particularly during these very challenging times, keeping the spirits of our town and community moving forward and positive and optimistic. It's just incredible work. So we just appreciate the time you've had here with us.
Thank you. And Mayor, thank you. If you all don't know, the mayor painted a picture of me for me of the Carnegie building. And there's a similar one hanging up in Chocolate. And again, Mayor, I really do appreciate that gesture.
Certainly. Well, thank you for your time spent here. We will miss you. Very good. So thank you, Andre. And now we'll move down to our item 7.2, and this is our Arbor Day Proclamation. And I have a proclamation, and Carlos Uribe is with us, and will receive the proclamation and hopefully have a few words for us. Carlos, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, man.
Very good. Well, I'll jump right into the proclamation. This is the City of St. Helena proclamation for Arbor Day. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And whereas the city of St. Helena has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation for 23 years. and desires to continue its tree planting practices. Now, therefore, let it be known that the city of St. Helena has declared the 16th day of December 2021 as Arbor Day and will be holding tree plantings in recognition of Arbor Day for the purpose of expressing our support for efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. Thank you very much. And Carlos, do you have a few words for us?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, everyone. On behalf of Public Works and for the city and as a whole, I'd like to receive the proclamation. Again, I don't take it for granted being up here when we get to this time of the year for Arbor Day. It is an honor to serve the city, especially as the arborist. And this year, Arbor Day, as we said, will be December 16th. And we will be replacing some of the trees we lost to the drought with some California native drought tolerant trees. We're replacing them with, we lost some dogwoods, and we will be replacing them with some Western redbuds. If you want to get an idea what they look like, you can obviously look it up, or we have a live exhibit right in front of Andre's old office. So we planted a set there. They're still in their infancy stage, but that's what the trees will look like. So again, this year we'll be holding it at Lyman Park. It is going to be we're not going to be inviting the public, of course, due to our COVID restrictions. So we're crossing our fingers that next year we can resume our invite to the public and to the council to participate. But again, for this year, it'll just be us doing that. Our park staff will be doing those plantings on Thursday, December 16th at 11 a.m. And once
Very
again,
good. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you for being here and all the work that you and the staff do focused on our trees, et cetera. So thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, very, very well. Now we'll move past staff briefings. Seeing none, we'll move to our consent items. This is where members of the council or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of considering alternative action, for extended discussion, or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. I'll just make a quick note here. There are some wastewater issues on the consent calendar, but there is also wastewater issues on the discussion calendar. So if there's comment on the wastewater issues, they can come during the regular discussion period. But I will read through the numbers of the consent calendar, and if anybody wants to see one pulled, let me know, and Cindy can watch our attendees from the public. So we'll start with 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, 9.4, 9.5, 9.6, 9.7, 9.8, 9.9, 9.10, 9.11, 9.12, and 9.13 will be heard after the consent calendar. So with that, seeing no hands or anything pulled, is there a motion to pass the consent calendar?
I move to pass the consent calendar.
Second.
Councilor Chateau,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Oh,
Councilor Hall,
I'm
Yes.
sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt. Cindy, am I seeing a hand from the public?
oh, I do see a hand. One moment. Ron, I'm allowing you to speak. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you. My name's Ron Rosenbrand, and I'd like to speak regarding the 9.1 consent. Is it an appropriate time to ask now?
Ron, the wastewater issues are going to come up in the discussion calendar. And your comments there, I think, would be more appropriate or most appropriate. And I'll look to the council to see if there's any other input there, but that's what I think.
Okay, thank you. That would be fine.
Okay, and that will come up then. So thank you.
You might let Ron know which agenda item that is.
Okay, so I'm looking down the calendar to Mark Prestwich, where we're going to have the discussion in terms of the
11-1.
11-1. There we go. Thank you. So Mr. Rosenbrand, 11-1 will be the right time.
And that is the item that's been adjusted, right, Madam City Clerk? We've moved that one in order. So that one would be taken at the end of.
That is correct.
Okay.
So I called on Councilmember Hall for a vote
Yes.
and Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Okay, so with that, that is our consent calendar. Now we're going to move to item 9.13. This was under consent. We're going to hear it under old business, but hear it now. I'm seeing Councilmember Chateau with a hand.
Thank you. This is the one that I'm going to recuse myself from since Hall Wines is a source of income for me through my husband's work.
Thank you.
So,
And
City Clerk, will you please text me when the item is done?
I will.
Thank you.
So as I mentioned, receiving community comment, we've decided to have some discussion here, take comment, but then create a special meeting, continue this to a special meeting to finalize where we're going with this. So with that, I want to hand it off to Ethan Walsh, our city attorney, to sort of take us into this and the process to sort of help us understand where we are, and then we can lead into taking comment.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So as you know, we have been engaged in discussion over this litigation for quite some time in conjunction with our special counsel, Kevin Siegel, who's been handling the litigation as the lead attorney. We brought this forward with a recommendation that you approve the settlement agreement this evening. However, as the council is also aware, we received a great deal of public comment since the agenda was published late last week. And so I believe that it's council's desire to give the public an opportunity to spend a little bit more time to look at the issue and then schedule a special meeting to discuss this item in more detail next week. With that said, it is on the agenda, and if people would like to comment tonight, they can do so with the understanding that council is not likely to take action tonight. I believe it's the consensus of the council that we would continue it to next week for a special meeting when we could dedicate some time to kind of finally making a decision on this. So with that, what I would recommend is to give people an opportunity to speak, and then council can have some discussion and decide on a date to which to move this meeting. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have in the meantime.
Thank you. And part of the reason to have a special meeting is to help in terms of discussing the issue and helping give some clarity to the community into where we are with this, so that comment from the community, there's some context for that through a little bit more clarity through a special meeting. I think I saw Councilmember Hardy's hand up, but it might have gone down.
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, and so what I'm going to do is just in a moment here, open it to public comment. I have reservations about getting into this item over the holidays. I would prefer that early January, but in hearing from our attorneys, there may be reason for moving forward. So I do at least want to have one additional meeting with more information and more opportunity for input. So I'll look to our council to see if there's any more comment before we look to the public.
Mayor, were you referring to me or referring to your?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I'm looking to Kevin.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you. This is our
Just
attorney.
to
Kevin.
clarify. So what I would do is just provide a brief summary of some of the points in the staff report. I think that might help frame the issues. I'm sure that everyone on the council has read it, and maybe many members of the public have. But if that's your pleasure, Mayor, I would briefly go over that just to be sure that I can highlight a few issues to frame.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. A summary would be excellent.
All right. So just to briefly go through some of the history, it was in 1961 that the mobile home park was established. That was pursuant to a use permit issued by the county, and that is of course because this property is not within city limits, so the city has no land use authority over the project or over the property, as of course it does with properties within city limits. Since that time, the city has provided domestic water service to the mobile home park. Then, and that's an ongoing service that the city is providing and is obligated to continue to provide water to this property. So then in 2008, the Hall Group purchased the property, and they pursued a project to do a rehabilitation or a redevelopment. Doesn't matter exactly how you want to describe it. There's different ways that can be put forward, but again, that is for the county to review as to the propriety of that project under its codes. So before that, the county, city, will you be providing prospective water service to the property after a permit is issued for whatever project the county would approve? So and that's where things went a little bit sideways, because in 2016, in December, the public works director at the time reviewed some water demand analysis, and pursuant to the water neutral policy that the city has, looked at the proposed project as it was shown and thought, well, it does look like it meets the water neutrality requirements that the city has, and then issued a will serve letter. But that will serve letter did not include any annual limitation on the level of water service, which would provide for penalty provisions. And that is that, among other terms, are common terms that the city uses in water use agreements, as opposed to a will serve letter, which is really of a different nature. The city staff and looked at with some assistance from these attorneys, looked at the code and thought, well, it looks like there is really a situation here where under our interpretation, it looks like it would have been most appropriate for there to have been a request for an agreement to be entered that would be comparable to other agreements that the city entered. Of course, the issue was the will serve letter had already been issued. So in 2018, after the city had taken a further look, its city staff rescinded that 2016 will serve letter. And that rescission is, of course, what led to this lawsuit. Several different theories that were presented in the lawsuit: a takings theory, which is inverse condemnation; breach of contract theory; quasi breach of contract theory, sometimes known as promissory estoppel, which is basically, well, we don't technically have a contract with you. We relied on your commitment to us, the will serve letter, and so you're obligated to serve it and claim for many millions of dollars in damages. So we opposed the lawsuit, of course. There were certain procedural motions that were filed to try to get it dismissed. Ultimately, the short of that story is that it was going to require really an evidentiary record and to be resolved by summary judgment or trial. So we discussed in closed session, went into settlement discussions of a variety of different forms to work out an agreement. And that's, of course, what is presented in the staff report and for council consideration. In the meantime, trial is set for March 14th. A summary judgment hearing is set for the beginning of February 1 I believe. And there would be a lot of work that would need to be done if this case actually does go forward to litigation. But instead, we had some extensive settlement discussions, of which Mayor, as you know, Lester Hardy and Councilmember Doring were part of the negotiation sessions and the mediation, and then we came with this settlement agreement. It was very tough to negotiate. There were a lot of issues, but we ultimately came down to one to
Kevin, I'm having a little trouble with your video. I don't know if anybody else is.
To the city council members to stances gets us to where we best can land the situation. Annual water limitation in the water use agreement was something that we would not have had absent these negotiations. It's not wasn't in the will serve letter that provides for penalty provisions if they go over the amount. The annual limitation is set at the historic use of water by the city's water neutral policy and the number of units that were on the site. Fire service agreement would be entered consistent with what had been presented to the city council, of course, dismissal of the lawsuit, and then a payment of over 6 years of $950,000, which is, of course, a significant amount of money, though it is without interest and spread out over time, and releases, and as I said, dismissal of the lawsuit. So it does advance city goals in securing annual limitations with penalty provisions to enforce it and reducing the risks of litigation. While we do think our case is strong, it is not necessarily, you can't guarantee anything in litigation, and there are some troubles potentially in the case, principally being if you've given an approval and then take it back, that always makes for a challenging situation, no matter how strong the case is. So on balance, we think the negotiated settlement agreement does advance the city interest. We also secured some other benefits through the litigation negotiations, including the securing a copy of the winery property, the Hall Winery property, water use agreement that provides for a reduction from the 12 million gallons annually down to 8 million gallons. So that is something now that the city has an ability to enforce and to get the penalties if Hall exceeds that amount. So that is basic outline of the principal terms and issues that we've gone forward. But again, just to briefly emphasize, again, the city doesn't have land use authority over this. We're not approving, or we're not asking you to approve any project, because that is not and would not be the city's role. It is if the halls get approval of their project from the county, well, then they would be able to use up to the annual limitation in the amount of water. And those are really the principal points that I wanted to bring forward. And if you, Mayor, or any council members have anything you would like to ask me or to further touch upon, of course, I'd be happy to address that.
Thank you for that. And I'll look to Vice Mayor Doring, Councilmember Hardy, if they have any additional comments as the negotiating team or part of that team, any comments, and then we'll go to public comment, unless there are other council input. Councilmember Hardy.
Thank you. Just one point I'd like to make. For me, I think this is an additional, perhaps not so obvious benefit of settlement. I took some time in thinking about this agenda item to make a rough estimate of the time I've spent working on this matter in the year since I was elected to the council, and it's at least 100 hours, which is a lot. And what that reminds me is that when we're in litigation, the cost of the city isn't simply the cost of our attorney's fees. It's also the cost of all of the time and effort that staff and council members spend in dealing with the litigation. And so, to be quite honest, to the extent that it's possible to make a settlement on terms that are reasonable and sensible for us, one of the benefits is we have that time, instead of being spent on litigation, available to spend on much more pressing matters in terms of our larger policy agenda, water being high on my personal list. So that's a benefit I want everyone to be aware of. We will have more time and resource available to spend on things of real urgency for this community, other than defending the city in this lawsuit. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Doring, any input here before we go to public comment?
Not at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And just, very challenging situation, and a lot of focus was put on this, trying to find a reasonable way forward. This addresses the settlement agreement, looks at the water aspect, as was mentioned earlier by Mr. Siegel. The land use aspects where that would come through the jurisdiction of the county, that's still that's not what this is. This issue is directly pointed towards. So he pointed that out, and I think that's important for our community to understand, and that perhaps can be more further fully clarified as we move forward here or in the next meeting. I'm seeing Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. I just wanted to just say thank you both to the Vice Mayor and to Councilmember Hardy for the work over at least the past year. Lester, you mentioned 100 hours. I think I've probably been in 100 hours worth of closed sessions on this, and the two of you spent at least that much time outside of those sessions working on this. So it's been quite a commitment, and thank you also to Ethan and his whole team at BBK. It's a little painful, but hopefully we're at the end. We're done with it. And to Lester's point, we have a lot more pressing items ahead of us, and I look forward to moving on to those. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. So that is our council comment at this point. So I'll look to our city clerk and look to see if we have public comment.
We do. Here you can unmute yourself and address the council. You have 4 minutes. Mr. Perez, you can unmute yourself.
Have I been successful?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yes.
Oh, okay. First off, I do understand that the parcel in question is outside the purview of the city council in regards to making a decision of the land use. But you shouldn't minimize the fact that it's still going to be having an effect on the community as a whole for the town of St. Helena. So to minimize it, I think is a wrong thing to do. The other that I feel to be important is to extend the time frame in regards to having an open meeting for the public to have the time to see what's involved with this proposal, as well as the fact that we're in the holiday season, that any open meeting for the residents as well as those outside of St. Helena, which utilize the water services of the town, they also are going to be affected. I mean, we all know that water is a limited and very cherished resource in regards to the county as a whole, as well as the cities. So this really has to be done in a more transparent manner, give the residents and the surrounding individuals that rely on the water from St. Helena to be able to assess this project, the effects it'll have, as well as the water demands that'll be pulling away. So I would encourage you as a council to have the open meeting after the first of the year in order to give the residents opportunity to study the issue, as well as have hopes of not as far as being timely, so that those interested can in fact attend and participate. So thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you for the public comment. And we'll look to see if there is additional public comment.
There is. And Randy, you can unmute yourself and address the council.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi, I have a question for Mr. Siegel. Did I hear that the St. Helena provides water to the winery? Did you say that it was reduced from some 10 million down to 8, or from 12 to 10? Did you say that St. Helena already provides water to the winery? Is that correct?
Mayor, should I be answering that now?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Just answer.
That is correct. Adjacent property, city is a water provider to it.
So the winery is outside of the city, but they're getting city water? And they can't provide their own, that little parcel of land from the water they already get?
Water is separately provided on a property by property basis, and they're not allowed to transfer water between parcels.
Why does the city provide water to the winery?
This
if it's
is
outside the city.
This is in St. Helena, the water system extends outside the city. This is sort of a historical sort of aspect of this. I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy with a hand up. He may have a thought here how to clarify this.
Certainly. Prior to the development of Bell Canyon back in 1948, when the city realized that the lower reservoir in Spring Mountain was inadequate to meet the city's needs, and that a severe water shortage was imminent, the city did two things. It negotiated a contract with the city of Napa. And when it became clear that they could agree on terms with the city of Napa, the city council looked to fund construction of a 12-inch water main from Rutherford to the city. It was an expensive project for the city at that time. They tried a bond measure. It did not pass. And if you go to the city minutes, you'll see that the council rejected all bids and constructed that water main with day labor, which I think is a really good indication of what a stretch it was for the city. So once that main was in place in 1948, the city looked for additional customers on that main in order to defray the cost. And that's how a significant number of customers were added to the city's water system. It was a measure undertaken, steps undertaken to reduce the cost of water to the residents of the city in connection with that 12-inch water main.
Okay,
that's the backstory.
Thank you.
And all the water agreements are on our website. I encourage folks to take a look at who we deliver water to. There are many.
The system extends down to the Rutherford area up to the Lodi Lane area. If there's any additional public comments,
There is. Elaine, you can unmute yourself and address the council.
Hi, Cindy, can you put the graphic up that I sent?
I can't.
You can't do that?
I cannot. I can't. Sorry, Elaine.
Good evening. I want to start by giving a shout out to Ms. Sofopoulos for all she does to make sure these meetings run smoothly. And thank you all for taking this item off the consent calendar. I also want to express my appreciation to Vice Mayor Doring and Councilmember Hardy for the time and effort they've put into reaching this settlement agreement. And I understand the reasons for making this agreement. Even so, I have a number of concerns that I would at least brought forward for the community to understand. Given that this agreement commits a cash settlement of nearly $1 million and will impact the St. Helena water supply for all users, I think the community deserves more time to learn about and weigh in on this issue. It is very concerning to me that the plans for the original motorhome park presented by the Halls no longer appears on the county's website. Vineland Vista Mobile Home Park does still show up on the county's planning department project map. However, the details no longer appear. Consequently, we have no idea what the Halls have planned for the site or how our water will actually be used and by whom, other than it is to service some 40+ hotel rooms. We should at the very least know that before the city approves the settlement. At the same time, I think we all deserve an explanation of what the Hall's intention is regarding 15 separate Vineland Villa LLCs as shown on the chart, which is in my letter, which I sent, but I guess we can't see it now. Do these involve the Vineland Vista Mobile Home Park? Is it a coincidence that it roughly coincides with the number of affordable trailer homes the Halls destroyed? Is their intention to sell shares in fractional ownership a la Picasso, thus relieving their guests of paying TOT, even to the county? I think the residents of St. Helena deserve an explanation of what they are really planning here. I understand that jurisdiction over land use belongs to the county, but given that this project will be taking water from the already beleaguered residents of St. Helena, not to mention the $950,000 to implement a high-end resort on our doorstep with no benefit at all to the citizens of St. Helena, this deserves time for the members of the community to comment on and understand before this resolution is passed. I also understand this agreement was reached to avoid these very, very deep pockets and their vast array of lawyers and lobbyists from suing the city again and again, or possibly prevailing in court with their $9 million lawsuit. But if we acquiesce without even a discussion, when will it stop? I dare say never. I understand too that members of the city council have been dealing with this issue for years and would like to get it off their plate as soon as possible. And while I do appreciate you moving it to a later date, I think next week is too soon. Given the holidays, moving it to the beginning of next year would be preferable. Thank you.
thank you for the public comment. Is there additional public comment?
There are no other hands raised. Oh,
Thank,
yes, there are hands raised. Just hold on. Yes. Katie, you can unmute yourself and address the council. Katie?
Can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Thank you. I have a multiple part list of questions actually, and I think I'll just sort of take them one at a time, Cindy and Mayor, and you can sort of decide who can answer the question for me. My first question is, and it might be best answered by Lester because he spent so much time researching this project. What has been the recent historic usage of the Hall Winery to determine the value of mitigating the 12 million gallons down to 8? In other words, have they been using 12 million gallons and therefore are we really gaining 4 million, or are we still just sort of talking monopoly numbers as far as usage?
So Ms. Sommer, if you could put your questions, just go through the list of them and then we'll have a response after.
All right, so that's number one. Can someone restate the actual amount of gallons that we are now committed to provide? I believe it was in the 20 millions, but I'm not sure. So I would just like clarification on that. I do understand that the city of St. Helena is not in a position to close this barn door. This barn door was opened by much higher levels of government and other entities. But my expectation of this unfortunate event is that we, at the very least, use it as a learning opportunity. And in order to learn from where our process broke down, in other words, it looked like it started around 2016 when our public works director issued this, will serve letter. And according to Mr. Siegel, it was not followed up with a water usage agreement. So I want to get a response from the council as far as how can we learn from this, and what steps can we put into place so that we don't find ourselves in a similar position again in the future. And my last question is, do we have any idea, have we ever projected how much actual water use the proposed development project is actually going to use based on the number of units or the projected occupancy? Do we have a sense of what type of actual water usage versus the amount that we're committed to use? And thank you very much for answering my multiple questions.
So thank you for the comment. I'm going to look to Mark Prestwich, our city manager. How do you think we should best manage these questions coming in? Should we craft a response that we can bring back at the special meeting? Should we address them now? What's your thought in terms of time here?
I'm happy to jump in if the council would like, or we can bring any question back in the follow-up staff report that we anticipate.
Vice Mayor Doring, do you have any thoughts in terms of process?
First of all, thank you for all the comments. The public engagement is critical. Democracy is messy, but it's necessary, and so the questions are welcome. I think we can probably answer some of the questions tonight, but I would recommend that our staff glean through the letters and maybe provide some answers, and then have those available either on our website or in a press release or in some form or fashion before our continued hearing on the matter. And I don't know when that's going to be, but I think that would be the approach to take. Excellent comments so far. Appreciate the civility in the questions and all of your interest in helping us to resolve this painful matter.
Ms. Sample, are you still on the line with us?
She is no longer. Do you want me
Okay.
to bring her back up?
Well,
Do you want me to bring her back up? Hey, she
perhaps.
raised her hand.
Yeah. Let's just see if we can.
Yes,
Hey,
Mayor,
you can
I'm
unmute
here.
yourself.
Now, my question is, are you okay if we sort of take the inventory of your questions and give staff the time to come up with the answers that'll be presented back as we get into the follow-up meeting?
I actually think that's the best solution, because I know that my questions are a bit detailed, and I would appreciate more forethought in your response. Let's do it right rather than quick. So I can send my questions in writing to Cindy, and she can forward them on if that's okay with you.
That sounds like the best course. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and then perhaps we can move to the next public comment.
Mark, you can unmute yourself and address the council.
Hi, this is Mark Smithers. I hope I hope everybody, the city council has read my email that I sent in. My concerns are not as much with the settlement offer, because I think legally, probably our attorneys have given us good advice on to what our position is. but my big concern is where the money is coming from. You know, our past director of public works was working in the capacity as a water enterprise, water department person when the initial, I think, permit or other verbiage was issued and then pulled back, and the agreement that you've come up with regards to the halls has a whole host of other water related issues. So I think this is absolutely a water department, water enterprise issue. And therefore I want to ensure that the water enterprise is the place where the funds are being used. The general fund is certainly not in a position to come up with $1 million to pay for this settlement. The water enterprise is in a much more favorable financial position, and quite frankly, ethically, morally, logically, this is a water issue. So I truly believe the water department should be funding this settlement. And I guess I would like to hear from council as to where they are on this subject. Because it's not in the report. There's nothing with regards to where the funding is coming from. And I think everybody in St. Helena and all the water customers, which is bigger than St. Helena, deserve to hear how this is being paid for.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments. Are there additional public comments?
There is. Susan, you can unmute yourself and address the council.
Okay, good evening, thank you. And I'd like to also thank everybody because I know this has been an incredible amount of work and it's taken a really long time. So I want to thank you for everything you've done. And I know it's been hard on everyone. There's one question though that I have. I wrote a letter and I don't think it got included in tonight's, but disregard that one because it's filled with spelling mistakes because I sent the unedited copy. So I thought, but you never want to do it too fast. I sent it at 4:59 or something. Hold on, let me see if I can get in the other room. But one question that I don't know what we can do about the settlement that has happened now, but I wanted to know if we have the right to oppose the project when it comes up for approval in the county. What does this mean for the relationship between the county and the cities? It has always been that hotels were to be commercial enterprises in the city and not in agricultural. So does this mean that the county will now allow hotels in ag? So that, I think, is a really important issue. You might not be able to say or comment on that, but I think that going down the road, it would be nice if people are aware that we have another possible time to deal with this land use issue. If the city can't deal with it, that as citizens, I don't know if the city can do it after this lawsuit. They can then go to the land use part of this, because it's my understanding that our lawyer thought that we had a really good case against land use, but we couldn't go to land use, so we dealt with the water. That this could not be the end of it if we have the right to, either as citizens or as the city, go after a hotel and ag. Thank you.
Thank you for the public comments. My understanding is there is a separate land use avenue, but that also, if this was a question that was sent in, perhaps that can be woven into the response.
I sent it in. I think you get two. You get the uncorrected, ungrammatical copy, and you get the more grammatical copy. So hopefully you'll go after that one. But I did send it in.
Okay,
but I think
thank
it came
you.
in too late. Yeah.
Is there additional public comment?
I am not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, we'll bring it back to council now. And again, I do want to thank our negotiating team for the work they've done and the focus put in on this. It was a very challenging situation and trying to come to the best resolution possible. With that, is there any other council comment at this point?
Just one thought, Mayor. I'd like to really thank Councilmember Hardy for working with me on this issue. He lended our team a lot of practical experience and advice based on years of practice in this area. I've enjoyed working with him. He's a tremendous benefit to our city on these kinds of issues. There's a whole host of issues that I wish I can talk about, but I understand that it's not appropriate to talk about because of the litigation nature that we're in. But I did want to just let the council and the community know that we were well represented by our council, city council, and our attorneys in this matter. It is a painful matter. It, to some degree, leaves a distaste in my mouth, but I've been practicing law for 34 years, most of it in litigation, and it is my assessment that the risk of losing at trial after losing a motion at pretrial and on a petition in the appellate court is too great of a risk for our community. When someone's asking for $9 million and have the potential to strike the city for $9 million, you have to wake up and get real. And I think that's what this city is doing right now. And so I would encourage folks to read the staff report carefully, review the settlement agreement, review some of the history that's involved here, and continue to engage and submit questions. And we hope that we can respond to as many of the questions that are presented. So just want to end by thanking Councilmember Hardy for the work he's done. I started a little earlier than Councilmember Hardy. So I am sure I've logged more than 100 hours, but that's my job and I'm happy to do it. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'm saying Councilmember Hardy, and I think we missed somebody at public comment. So Councilmember Hardy, can I reopen public comment and hold your comment, or would you prefer to go now?
I would prefer that we finish the public comment and then bring it back to the council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll look to our city clerk. I think we had one hand that we missed coming in.
There is, it's a person that has called in with the last four digits of 5662. You can unmute yourself and address the council.
Okay, I think
So the person that ends in 5662, you can unmute yourself.
We're still seeing the mute here. And
press
perhaps
star
they
6. If the caller could try pressing star 6.
Now we can hear you. Yes.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Hello?
Can you hear us? Yes.
Yes, I can. Thank you very much. Yes, this is a real painful situation.
Tom, you might want to mute your, if you've got a computer going in the background.
Did we lose him?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, he muted himself again, it looks like.
Tom, I'm asking you to unmute yourself. Go ahead and hit star 6. Tom, try hitting star 6 on your phone.
Hello, does that work?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the difficulty. I was listening on my computer at the same time. Yeah, I had a couple of questions I'd like to have answered if there's going to be a future meeting on this to provide the public with more information. And I do understand what Councilman Doring was saying when he was saying it looks like it might be our best alternative. But I was looking at our municipal code, and I was looking under the section 1304, and I was curious. It's pretty clear that we shouldn't be giving water to anyone outside of our city limits. It's in the municipal code, and I was curious how this happened in the first place. That would be one question I'd like to have answered. And the second one would be, I'm wondering, I know the city is going to be collecting some fine money, penalty money from the water leak situation. I would like to make the added comment that maybe that might be, if there's enough money to provide that $950,000 to the settlement from that direction, rather than taking it out of the water enterprise, because you know, I really feel that, you know, the public, in a way, well, I'm not going to go there right now. I'll go there later. Secondly, I was wondering, is there going to be any other costs involved besides the $950,000? Will there be attorney's fees to pay for the city, for example, the defense funds that we've paid for, and where will that money be coming from? And let's see. Well, I guess that's about it for now. But thank you very much for allowing me the last minute here. I had my *9 pressed, but I guess for some reason it wasn't coming through. So thank you again very much.
Thank you for the public comment. And with that, I believe that is our last public comment.
There are no other hands raised.
Okay, so we will close the public comment, and I'll go to Councilmember Hardy.
Thank you. Well, we have a good number of very thoughtful questions, and I'm very much in support of scheduling a special meeting and having a staff report prepared that's responsive to the questions that we've received. Some of them tonight, I assume, without having checked that there are additional questions in the correspondence that we've received, besides just the questions presented to us here in public comment at our meeting. There are two things I think that everyone, public included, should be aware of as the council goes through this discussion tonight and picks a date for a special meeting, or considers a special meeting. One is that, three things really. The litigation, neither the litigation or the settlement are about the land use entitlement that the halls are pursuing. And it's true that that the water we provide, and it's important, I think, for everyone to remember that water service has been provided continuously to this parcel to the present date, and to the best of our knowledge since 1940. So water has been provided to that parcel this year and used on that parcel this year. We have limited control over what people use water for. There are situations in which we do restrict it. Water use at the Hall Winery is restricted. They're prohibited from using it for outdoor irrigation. But for the most part, our water customers use the water are allowed to use water for anything on the parcel. That's the most typical arrangement. And then under special circumstances, there are limitations on the quantity. But the volume of water that we're proposing to provide through the settlement agreement is based on an analysis of the number of bedrooms that are part of the project that used to be visible on the county website. And so we've keyed the water agreement to that amount. It's consistent with the total number of bedrooms that were on the site when it was previously operated as a mobile home park before the evictions and the removal of those mobile homes. So for most purposes, this is a continuation of water service, and now with a water agreement that provides for a penalty should that amount be exceeded. And I think that that's a very important point to consider. The other thing is that in terms of how the council reached the decision that this was a reasonable and appropriate settlement, there's an awful lot of that we can't discuss because it was and remains part of confidential communications, and the lawsuit still isn't settled. We have a proposed settlement, but the lawsuit has not been dismissed. It's a very, very difficult thing for us as council members to bring something of this nature into the public forum for review and comment by our citizens when we're really not free to provide a complete description of how we got to this point in the settlement negotiations and have this settlement to present. It's not comfortable. It's worse than that, really. It's awkward and unpleasant, but it's part of what happens each and every time a municipality ends up in litigation and then settles. There's the litigation process imposes a kind of a cone of silence on all those things that relate to the litigation strategy and the litigation risk assessment. And there's really no way around that I'm aware of. And then finally, with respect to timing, I am very much concerned that we not schedule a meeting in a way that does anything to put the viability of this settlement proposal at risk. And so I'm in favor of scheduling it for some time in the next week. In so doing, we don't give up our opportunity or right, if you would express it that way, as a council to schedule another meeting after that. We don't have to decide that now. It's not something I would be thinking of at this moment, but I want to hear from everyone who has something to say about this. I think it's really important for everyone who's concerned to have the opportunity to speak to us, and as best we can to answer the questions that are raised. But I'm hoping that members of the public who come to us to comment will focus as much as possible on the settlement agreement, not on their concerns about what happens potentially with the county approval. That really will be entirely outside of our control. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that the input there from Councilmember Hardy and Vice Mayor Doring helps sort of to frame what we're looking at. So talking about timing in terms of another meeting, as I said, my feeling is that early next year, the first week of January would be preferable for our community to have time to sort of process this. But in hearing from our attorney, also there's some concern that in terms of litigation, there may be issues with that. And so wanting to look at what a reasonable date to come back with and get the input from the council here on a date certain.
Mayor, if I could just add, the one request that I had regarding a meeting date is that it not be next Tuesday, as I have a conflict that evening. But if the council could indulge another day next week, that would be preferred for me.
Okay, and I'll just circle back to Kevin one more time and just really want to get your take on, whether we, if early next year gives, first week of January, does that really throw us off in terms of what we would gain or lose in this?
I would definitely recommend that we try to get this resolved within approximately a week, whether it's this coming Friday or next Monday or Tuesday. It is still before the holidays. We can provide a supplemental staff report. The issues are actually quite straightforward, I think, as to where we are. And if we go into January, it's still a response time for people to deal with over the holidays. And then we're butting up against litigation deadlines that could complicate things and put the settlement at risk. So I would certainly encourage the city council to try to keep this moving so that a decision can be made on the settlement within approximately a week. I understand that members of the public, some members of the public may not appreciate or like that idea, but under the situation, I suggest to the council that would be the more appropriate route.
Okay, my preference then in terms of looking at calendar next week is Wednesday, the 22nd. It looks like December 21st, Tuesday is off. December 20th, Monday is another option. Any input from council here on those 2 days, the Monday or the?
I prefer Wednesday. Late in the afternoon or early evening.
The staff has some potential challenges with a Wednesday evening council meeting, and so Monday may work better for us.
Monday works best for me.
Councilmember Hardy, I'm seeing your hand up.
Thank you. I know I'm available Monday. I may be driving up from LA on Wednesday, and that I don't know that I could commit to a time certain on the Wednesday.
So if we look to the Monday, in terms of a time, where does that sit, Mr. Presswich?
I was anticipating the council would be interested in the 6 p.m. meeting, but if you're interested, if you would consider the afternoon, we can work with that as well, I believe.
Afternoon does not work for me, but I would say anything from 5:30 on, I can do.
I'm fine with that too. 5:30 onward.
Councilmember Hardy or Vice Mayor Doring, does that sound reasonable?
It works for me, and this is a bit of a digression, but I want to thank Vice Mayor Doring for all the time he spent with me in those negotiations and mediation meetings. It was a long and challenging enterprise. I don't have as many years as an attorney behind me as Paul does, and I don't spend as much time on litigation matters either, but I can easily tell you I've never spent a year or a year plus working on a settlement before. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you for the work. So are we looking at 6 o'clock on Monday, the 20th?
That works for me. Thank you, Councilmember. I appreciate it.
Very well. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for the ongoing work and focus on this. So with that, we'll wrap up that item. Oh, I'm seeing Mark Prestwich, our city
Need
manager.
to clarify 5:30 p.m. or
6, I think works
6?
better.
Okay.
6.
And our city clerk.
Okay, I am just going to welcome Anna to rejoin.
And I will see you next time.
Kevin, thank you. Thank you for all your work on this. Really appreciate it. So we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will, as we said, the questions and the comments that have come in, our staff will bring that together and respond to the input that's come in. So thank you, everybody. And thanks for those for joining us. So
Anna will be rejoining.
Okay. So we'll move now to our item. This is 10.1. This is consideration and proposed adoption of a resolution approving a 5-year list of projects under measure. Let me wait. If I'm not seeing Anna yet, so let me wait and make sure she's on. Here she is. Okay.
There she is.
Great. So this is item 10.1. This is consideration and proposed adoption of a resolution approving 5-year list of projects under Measure T program and determining that the actions authorized by this resolution are exempt from CEQA. And this is Mr. Rincon, our Public Works Director.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and council members. This is brought up to City Council every 2 years. It's our Measure T list, as we call it. And it's a list that is required for us to file with the county so that they can see what kind of program we have to keep our streets, paved and in good condition. This year, this is like I said, this is a every other year revisit of this list. Basically, we're kind of committing to years 1 and 2 on the list. Years 3, 4, and 5, things do change. The review does change. And so what happens is earlier this year, we went out and used a program called PTAP that went out and did the condition assessment of all the streets and graded them. And basically right now, St. Helena is getting a grade of about 49 out of 100, which is not that good. We all try to strive for 100%, but that's near impossible. So a good grade would be 85% or thereabouts. And so we take a look at the PTAP list, which it's just strictly a condition assessment. And then we also kind of figure out, the budget that we have to work with and trying to accumulate projects that are near each other, because that we get better costs from contractors when your projects are co-located rather than stretching too far apart. And so we went through it. We tried to massage it a little bit. And the before you is the revised list for this coming fiscal year. Again, years 1 and 2 of the report are definitely the ones we will be targeting for projects. Depending on the cost that we get, we'll try to accomplish all of year 1 within the next fiscal year and year 2 thereafter. But again, costs are a little bit out of control right now. So we hope to accomplish all of year 1 within that first fiscal year. But basically, it's a policy decision. It's up to council to decide whether this list is needed. Now, I will add a caveat that it is due to the county by December 31. So if there's no consensus tonight, we'll have to have a special meeting. Maybe I'll just dovetail this one onto your next meeting, special meeting, but don't want to go there. I hope we can get some consensus on tonight's listing.
Very good. Thank you for the report. And I'll look to our city manager to see if he has anything additional to add before we open it to the council.
Nothing else to add, but we're happy to share a screen later for some of the purposes of conversation, so that if you would like to look at a map of the 5-year list, we have a color-coded map that's in the staff report that we can also share on the screen.
Okay, thank you very much. Any initial comments by council? Any questions, comments on the lists and where we are with this? And I'm seeing no hands. So I will look to our city clerk and see if we have comment from the public.
We do. We do. Tracy, you can unmute yourself and address the council.
Hello. Good evening, City Council members. I implore you to look at maintaining our city roads with fresh eyes. In 2019, the pavement condition index for St. Helena was 59. Now in 2021, the pavement condition index for St. Helena is 49, a decrease of 7 points, a significant decrease. Whatever we are doing, it's not working too well. In September of this year, the ITOC, Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee at Napa County, said St. Helena's streets are the lowest ranked of all Napa County cities, lower than Napa, Yountville, Calistoga, and American Canyon. This is very unpleasant news. My goal tonight has 3 parts regarding Hunt Avenue. I ask that the section between June Lane and Hunts Grove Park be included in the maintenance plan, that the pavement quality be reviewed to ensure it lasts and is smooth, and finally, that the project does not disrupt the current drainage. Hunt Avenue is rocky, it is rough, it's loud, the asphalt is failing in numerous locations, which are not even mentioned in the 5-year plan. Hunt Avenue sounds like cars are driving on snow tires 365 days a year. It can be hard to have a conversation with cars driving by. Cars can be heard from the backyard. They can be heard loudly within the house. It is loud not only due to road texture, but loud due to volume of cars and cars going fast. Hunt Avenue is also uneven, potholed, and patchworked, which is a safety issue for all of the residents. The improvement on your report between Edwards and June Lane leaves an adjoining section between June Lane and Hunts Grove Park, which is rocky, old, and uneven. I implore you to complete the job and repair the street in front of the remaining 3 houses so there will be not a seam at June Lane, so that the patchwork will be reduced, and frankly, for equity. Other streets are getting multi-block improvements, while one of St. Helena's most traveled streets is getting a 1-block improvement. Why is Hunt Avenue getting an AC overlay versus reconstruction? It is my understanding an asphalt overlay doesn't last as long as a full reconstruction. I'm very concerned the money spent will be wasted if the solution creates another rocky road in a relative few years. Does the proposal change the road height and thereby the drainage in any way? This would be a mistake in my opinion because there's a flat section of the road and water can be trapped on private property. Hunt Avenue gets a very high volume of car and foot traffic, and it should be a quiet, smooth surface road. I implore you to remedy the situation. It should be the same smooth road as nearby streets, such as Signorelli, Childs, Library Lane, Monte Vista. It should be a long-term solution at a minimum from Edwards to Hunts Grove Park, but truly it should be addressed from Main Street to Hunts Grove Park. There are numerous failures on this roadway, which serve neighborhoods of high-density housing, low-income housing, senior housing. It is one of the highest used streets in our city. I'm highly disappointed it is not getting a better treatment in the projected maintenance schedule, and I beseech you to re-examine the schedule, re-examine the section to be paved, re-examine the type of remedy, i.e. reconstruction, and install a quieter road surface. The City Council is voting tonight to spend approximately 1.1 to 1.3 million per year. We as residents need to spend our money wisely to make it go the farthest. It is my understanding.
Thank you.
It is my understanding you
We're at-
by this plan in progress. Thank you.
Thank you for the public comment. And we will move to the next public comment.
Randy, you can unmute yourself and address the council.
Hi, good evening, Honorable Mayor, my Vice Mayor and council members. In the letter I submitted on this issue, I included several photographs of the failed road surface in the 900 block of Hunt Avenue. These photographs depict a failing road over several hundred feet in length with large, open, deep cracks, loose rock, broken and missing chunks of asphalt, and large craters that measure several feet across. The photographs also reveal the surface texture of the roadbed as extremely coarse. I hope you will visit the site in person and see for yourself. I would like to offer 3 suggestions regarding the street paving 5-year plan. I suggest, number 1, prioritizing and reordering the schedule to start with the worst streets. In the MOE Maintenance of Effort report of the City Council, paragraph 7, percentages are given to all the roads in the city. And I quote, the PMP report shows that approximately 35% of the city's roadway network is in excellent or very good condition. 20% is in good or fair condition. 15% is in poor condition. And 30% is in very poor condition, end quote. That's outrageous. A third of the city's streets are in very poor condition. Although these streets are not identified by name, please consider reordering the schedule so that the very poor streets are addressed first. Hunt Avenue is one of these. It is a most heavily trafficked connector on the east side of town, equal to Pope Street, and it is not scheduled for repair until 2024-2025 time slot. Number 2, the treatment, the quality of the surface. Clarify the treatment, ACOL with fabric or a full reconstruction, and how is that determined? These are extreme variations. There are extreme variations in the surfaces of the streets in St. Helena. Some are smooth and quiet to travel on and produce less vibration. Other roads are intolerable because they're coarse and rocky. Therefore, the finished road, this rough surface amplifies car tires to the degree that it is quite loud and very annoying, even inside the house with the doors and windows closed. Therefore, the finished road bed should be smooth, tight, and quiet and long-lasting. And number 3, reevaluate the length and distance of each repair. In the case of Hunt Street, I agree with Tracy because the Street Saver software map falls short by ending the paving at June Lane. This is insufficient and does not address the full scope of the need. It is easy to see if you walk east from Railroad Avenue, where the trees are buckling the street and the sidewalk, past June Lane to Hunts Grove Park, which is located 3 parcels east of June Lane. This is the full distance that should be incorporated into the reconstruction of Hunt Avenue. And if, as Mr. Mark Rubicon Ibarra suggests, we're trying to partner up various streets together so that they can be done and you save money by having them in close proximity. June Lane, which is probably an excellent or very good condition, is slated to be done next year. So why not do June Lane and Hunt at the same time? And therefore you could be saving some money. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the public comments on this. Are there additional public comments?
I am not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, very, very good. We'll bring this back now to the council. Are there any initial thoughts from council here? One of my questions is on, as we present this Measure T plan, if we can identify additional funds, can we move quickly on some of the more needy areas? In a sense, the question is, if we agree on submitting this plan, can we then also keep an open end on where we might apply additional funds?
Well, absolutely. I mean, Mark, if you would concur, identifying additional funds for street paving is always welcome. I mean, I would not reject it, but again, some of the whole point of this program is to preserve our streets that are in fairly good shape already. is we don't want them to get into the condition of a full reconstruction, because then that's a much more expensive project. So we're trying to stretch the dollar, as I say, and preserve what it can be preserved, and then address the deeper issues as our score picks up a little bit, because right now we're at 49, and that's not a good score.
So seeing that things moving forward on College Avenue, I think is excellent to see that. I think the concerns on Hunt and then also on Oak, both really heavily traveled areas. And my concern is if that's where, sort of a lot of pedestrian, bicycle traffic, if there's a way to consider some of these more heavily trafficked areas. I grasp the concept that it's more cost efficient to repair newer streets, but I do think looking at some of the places that may offer some, really significant concerns in terms of safety, et cetera, a way to prioritize those as well. Any thoughts here from council where we are? I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy.
Yes, well, I'm wondering, and this is a question for either Mark Prestwich or Mark Rinconibara. Is there a deadline associated with the recommended action?
There is. It needs to be submitted to the county by the 31st of this month.
Thank you. I thought there was a deadline looming. Well, I think it's important that we acknowledge two things in this context. One, that the condition of our streets at present does reflect an inadequate maintenance program going back some years, and I'm reminded of an effort I made at some point in the last couple of years to figure out roughly how long it took the city as a municipality to fully recover from the Great Recession. And my best sense of it was that it took close to 10 years. And just about the time we rounded that corner, we entered the period of devastating fires, a pandemic, and now a major drought. It's been a struggle for St. Helena to balance the budget and take care of all of our infrastructure. We haven't succeeded in doing that. We have neglected infrastructure in a great many areas, and including what I call our administrative infrastructure. So the concerns that have been addressed or raised here tonight by our public, our constituents, they're not new. It's really become something close to chronic. And I'm reminded also that gas tax was not increased for a very long period of time, which
yes, excuse me. Since 1985, the federal gas tax has not been raised. So our roads have been chronically underfunded for decades.
Going back to, I think, perhaps, the note I have is the gas tax was not raised from 1993 to 2018. So I don't know what the metrics are for evaluating how one moves forward. I understand precisely what you said, Mr. Rincon, about the importance of preserving the streets that are in good condition so that they don't become even more expensive to maintain down the road. But the concerns we're hearing are about the impact of badly deteriorated roads on the lives of our residents, and it's a balancing act. So it sounds like the best we can do at this point is move forward as proposed while looking for additional funding sources so that we can expand the projects on the streets, expand in terms of the dollars, and perhaps that enables us to change some things in terms of timing as well. But I think it makes a lot of sense for us to look to some interim report on how we're doing with this, both in terms of progress on street repairs and the search for additional funds. Roughly a quarter out, or I know much of the work ordinarily happens in the summer, so it would be good to get a report back before the big paving contracts go out and the work commences, so that we have an opportunity, if we wish to pursue it, to make some changes in the plan. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do support that idea of an interim report, so that as we move forward, we got the information and can adjust as we go. I'm seeing City Manager Prestwich with a hand.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a little bit of background on the city's funding for roads. Prior to April of 2018, there was no local sales tax available dedicated to transportation, and Measure T replaced Measure A, which was the 20-year half-cent sales tax that helped this entire region invest in flood protection infrastructure. And we've seen how well that investment has worked in recent years. The money from Measure T really was a game changer for our opportunity to help invest more aggressively in our road maintenance. The maintenance of effort that the city has associated with Measure T is $379,000 a year. That was based on the city's historic investment in its streets. And it's fair to say that investment obviously wasn't enough. Measure T today is adding an extra $900,000 to approximately $1.3 million on top of that maintenance of effort. And what also has changed since April of 2018 is the state legislature adopted SB 1, which provides a little over $100,000 of additional resources that we can dedicate to street maintenance. The PCI numbers, the road quality rating numbers that were quoted earlier, don't include the approximately $1 million of investment that was made in the Cornella neighborhood this past summer. So those numbers are going to be higher when we see the rating next year. And it's important to know that we're only in about year 3 of essentially a 25-year tax. So the city, under the current methodology, is not allowed to borrow against the future revenues that are coming from this tax. There is a local conversation, an active conversation within VTA about possibly revisiting that methodology that would allow for the agencies to bond against those future revenues and deliver projects a little faster. So that's an active conversation. But the cruel irony of street maintenance is, in order to stretch the dollar most effectively, it's important to invest in the streets that we have before they move off a curve. And on May 25th, 2021, we provided the City Council with a comprehensive report on our street conditions, along with just how to best stretch the dollars, and a fairly thorough review of our entire street maintenance activities. So I would encourage anyone looking to learn more information about the street maintenance process, as well as the types of investments and how they're made. That report is on our website on the May 25th, 2021 agenda. And we're happy to bring back a follow-up report similar to the report that was presented last spring.
Thank you for that. And I'm seeing Councilmember Chateau, and then I am going to return to public comment. We missed one. And so what I'll do is have check in with Councilmember Chateau here. And then
Thank you. I'll try to be really quick. So I just had a couple thoughts. Once I know how bad it is on that road. I've ridden my bike on it. I understand it. I wish too that we could do more for that street faster. It's just one of those things when you bike around town, you can just see how bad the streets are. And I think we all feel that and want to make the improvements and know that when we're doing that, something has to come off the list. So I like that idea of looking for the additional funds. And I was just wondering if there's any thinking about the federal infrastructure package. And if we have the capacity to be looking into that and seeing if there can be any help with that for money for our roads was one thought and a question. And then the second question is just about the bike and pedestrian plans. And if this current list also includes looking at putting in the infrastructure, if it's noted already in our bike and pedestrian plan, like looking at Valley View, would it include the striping? Is that already worked in and being thought through?
Yes, Councilmember Chateau, it does include street striping as part of the reconditioning of the pavement. So if there's scheduled any pavement and any bicycle lanes that are being proposed for the street, we would include it as part of the contract and get it in place. So yes to that question.
Thank you.
Yeah. The other thing in terms of federal funding, any rumors, I'm welcome to tell me about them because I will pursue. But I haven't heard anything, so it's the best kept secret right now as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
Pavement projects are fairly good for that because we already pretty much have design details and the specifications done for them. So it's easy to reuse and apply to another street just by going out there and reassessing what the street will be applying it to.
Because I was on a call with Mike Thompson, a representative from our congressman, going over all of the money available. And they said, please reach out to their office to have help understanding those programs and they can direct us in the right area. So I'd be happy to share the information I learned.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. And I saw Councilmember Hall. Councilmember Hall, do you mind if I take the public comment because it may inform the discussion? It was something we didn't see this hand earlier. Are you okay waiting?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to reopen public comment here and take the hand that was raised.
Julie, you can unmute yourself and address the council.
Hello, is this me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, hi, it's Julie Redden. I was just, I think saying the same as Anne is that I think if you have your ducks in a row with the road work you need, that, this Build Back America Better plan, if everything is in order, you should be able to get some money to help with that. I just know because I work with Caltrans, and when Obama's, the money came in for that, Caltrans had all those projects in line. That's why you see all the stuff going on in the state of California, because they had everything ready and they got a lot of the money before anybody else. So I'm saying there's going to be money out there. And if we have our ducks in a row, I'm sure we can get some money for that. That's my comment.
Thank you for the comment. Thank you for the public comment. So we'll bring it back now to the council and certainly is on our city radar and our public works radar to be reaching out and looking for any possible funding. And I'll go to Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. I did not have much more to add to this. I do recall clearly our conversation in May where we had some nice charts that spelled out what we were doing with our funding decision. I mean, basically, the city is not putting in money from the general fund. This is all coming from Measure T. And after our 5-year plan, I think the estimate was that our road condition would be essentially as it is right now today. So I would comment that while we struggle here on the council to figure out how to prioritize where we lay new pavement, I think with the score of 50 or whatever it's going to be, I appreciate the feedback from the two folks who spoke under public comment. I think a lot of folks across town feel that way. And as the streets continue to deteriorate, we'll have a lot more struggle in determining how to allocate what limited monies we have. So I would also say that much of our infrastructure as a city, I feel is in the same condition. And I don't, envy Mr. Rincon. He's got a huge task ahead of him. The thing about the streets is that all of our residents drive them or walk on them or ride their bikes every day. So it's something that's part of our infrastructure that's in front of us every single day and every moment, as are some of our water pipes, of course. But there's a lot of our infrastructure that the rest of the community doesn't see every single day, that it's in this similar condition where we're a bit beyond just maintaining things. We are literally rebuilding our infrastructure. And so funding is going to be absolutely a priority. And by funding, it doesn't necessarily mean borrow. Obviously, we're going to need to borrow, grant money, whatever we can. But the more we can focus on revenue generation, the better our community is going to live, and the quicker we can start repairing our community. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. And I think one of the things to factor in is what we were looking at this year, coming through the pandemic, not having a full idea of where our stability was going to be as we assess numbers from the pandemic. I think as the vaccines rolled out, as things stabilized, we're perhaps now in a better position to look at what other funds, what general funds might go to looking at our more needy streets. My thought is that we look at this Measure T list and recognize that it's put together to address the issues with the streets where we think we'll get the most efficiency with the dollar. But if we do look at that interim report, prioritizing the needy streets and having, kind of coming at this from two different angles. We come from it from this Measure T list, but also from a list of needy streets, and think about where we are in terms of our economic stability at this point in the pandemic, things being more stable. Perhaps we can identify some more funds from the general fund, et cetera, to address some of the needier areas. And I saw Councilmember Chateau. So with that, and is there any other comment from council? I'm seeing Eric Hall or Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just comment, I like the idea of having an interim report. It would be great to see that on all of our infrastructure projects. Where are we? We're going to be in a similar situation where whatever's in front of us at the moment is where we want to put our energy, and we're constantly faced with the struggle to figure out how much and how fast to run in what direction. So we do have a mountain of infrastructure work ahead of us, let alone just civic buildings to figure out. And the more we can keep that 4, 5, 10-year picture in front of this group, I think the better. So my suggestion would be that we find a way to start providing some pictures on that mountain of infrastructure and keep it in front of us at least quarterly. It'd be great to see it every other meeting, frankly. But how do we get that conversation going so as a body we can start doing a better job at saying we want our overall CPI number to be 60 or 65, and how do we start chipping away to get there? And are we causing more wreckage elsewhere in our infrastructure if we over allocate in one area versus another? Right now, we're doing a lot of running around and patching everywhere we can as fast as we can. So we've got to get the revenue going. If there's more grant funding out there available to us, let's get it. But I think as a body, we need to do a better job understanding how best to allocate our resources.
Thank you. I'm seeing Vice Mayor Doring.
Well, I don't disagree with that at all. Thank you, council member. I want to get back to the notion of equity. I think that's a really excellent point that I don't think our models are taking into consideration. And I don't have an answer tonight, but I think we really do need to consider the fact that there are certain roads in our community that are more heavily used and that have more of an impact when they're in a really bad condition than others. There are a lot of people who live on Hunt Avenue. We know that. And so I don't have a solution for that, but that does hit me in the heart there a little bit, that somehow that part of our analysis may not be considered the way it should be. And I think we should be open to that in the future. There was one part of me that thought, well, back in the day, if you didn't even get on a list, you were moaning and groaning. And there were times in this community, there are places in this community that folks don't recognize that are even part of our community that never even got on the list for 25 years, never got on the list. And finally, the council recognized, wait a minute, something's going on here. This is not right. So I would just bring that up. And that's not long ago. I want us to maybe keep that in mind as we approach these issues. I also think that Oak Avenue, north of Adams, is heavily trafficked. And it is in a really bad shape. And I would just say that might be, especially on the intersection there, that might be a public safety issue. I know I've seen Councilmember Hall almost fall there a couple of times on his bicycle, and I do not want to have a claim. That is not even on a list, as far as I know. I know the other part of Oak. So there's sometimes common sense tells you, wait a minute, some of these more heavily impacted areas like Oak and Hunt, maybe there's some consideration there when we do this interim report and find some money, as we did in the El Bonita neighborhood a couple of years ago. That turned out to be a fabulous project for that community. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I'll look to the city manager. I mean, I'll look to the council too, to see if we have, consensus or ready to have a motion here on the recommendation, but with the idea that we're creating an interim report and a secondary list and a way to address these more challenged, these more degraded streets as quickly as possible. Is there a way that we can not let those slip off the radar?
Yes, of course. We can work on an interim report that brings you other options related to additional resources that you might commit to accelerating investments in our streets. We know that some of the report and work that was done in May of 2021 included an analysis of what would happen with an extra $200,000 a year. And the answer is it really does change the trajectory of some of those all of our streets, really. Again, I think from an equity perspective, the direction we worked on in building this 5-year plan did take into consideration equity throughout the streets, but the extra overlay of highly trafficked corridors is something that wasn't considered. I do think that tonight, with respect to the public comment, it would be easy for us to amend the project list to include the extra street length that was recommended via the public comment. If there's another corridor such as Oak, that can be placed potentially on the list. The only consideration related to Oak in particular is our underground utilities master plan identifies some shortcomings of the utility infrastructure. And what we do want to do is avoid having to do these projects twice, where we pave and then have to do a underground utility repair, replace this failing storm drain, for example, which is one of the challenges with Oak. So we want to fix that infrastructure first and then do the paving second, again, to stretch the dollar. And Oak may be one of those projects that means that we need to, as part of our effort at addressing this equity issue, is also build a funding plan for the storm drain infrastructure that needs general fund money to help advance that work as well. So I think there's also some additional infrastructure planning that would need to be aligned with the paving projects when we speak to you next in this interim report.
Thank you. With that, so if we look at that Hunt Avenue stretch, and then Oak is also the other one that, I just do really think it needs some attention, and I completely grasp the infrastructure underneath and not wanting to do things twice, but I do think we're getting to a safety issue that may override, it may speak to an interim measure on Oak because it's heavily trafficked, and a lot of, kids from the different schools and community going this way and that. In terms of efficiency in putting forward a motion here and moving this item forward, Mr. Prestwich, if there's support for looking at adding those two streets or some aspect now, does that dovetail in with this moving forward, or should we really approach it differently?
Any street that you would like to see on the 5-year plan should be included tonight. If we're planning to add Oak, I would recommend that as a 26-27 timeframe that would allow us to identify the financial resources and also address the failing utilities that are under that street. And I'm really specifically referencing the storm drain.
I guess for me on Oak, I look at 26-27 and I don't know what's going to be left of it by that time. Any thoughts from council here?
Well, I just think, again, if we have a 5-year view of revenue and expenses and what we can or can't do in terms of filling gaps with grants, then great. And I think, Mr. Mayor, to your point, I'd love Oak to be in much better shape right now, but it means we've got to give up something else somewhere in the city. And I don't know what that is. We've got plenty of water tanks that need repair, plenty of miles of water line that need repair. Our intake towers about ready to tip over. There's plenty of work to go across the board. So, we're allocating money that we don't have, and until we get a good picture in front of us, it's basically this long-range financial plan, but it only needs to be a 5-year picture. And we get better and better and better as a group here talking about what are the priorities as a community and where do we want to allocate money while we are building revenue. We need money to repair things. That's just a fact of life.
Thank you. So my thought here in trying to move this item forward is if there is support for it as it is with a few amendments, if we were to add anything, does that mean that we would have to come back for the special meeting?
No, we can, what we'd like to do is capture any additional streets you would like to add to the list. As long as they're on the list, that's what's most important. We want them on the list. This list is brought to you every year. It can be amended. We can move streets from one year to the next. As Mr. Rincon indicated, the next 2 years are really our focus right now on delivering those projects. So those are the projects that we're anticipating seeing in the next 2 summers of paving. But in years 3, 4, and 5, those types of projects, whether it's Oak in 26-27 as part of an amendment tonight, that can be accelerated if we, for example, built a financial plan on how we invest in the storm drain, unless there was a council priority to postpone that. I think the challenge is every time we postpone stretching that dollar, it really limits our ability to fix these streets more comprehensively faster. So it will take longer to improve our infrastructure if we're going to do a project twice. So my recommendation is let's add any street you would like to the 5-year plan. If there's a funding issue, we can identify that later and talk about additional resources that might be able to be committed at that later date. So for example, if a hotel project, if the Farmstead Hotel project was online a couple of years out, there may be additional resources that can be committed to accelerating investment in our streets. So our interest tonight is making sure we capture the streets that you would like to see added to this, if there are any.
Okay, very, very good. And now I'm seeing Councilmember Chateau.
Thank you so much. I was I could do the motion to add that oak to 2627, but before I did that, I wanted to ask, why was oak not on here?
The short answer is we have significant investment in the storm drain infrastructure that needs to be made. So that may be $500 to $1 million worth of general fund investment to deliver the storm drain work on Oak Avenue. So there's a significant amount of infrastructure that needs to be invested in on Oak. And we know we've had 2 failures on Oak in the last couple of years. That the total repair job, I think in those 2 cases totaled about $500,000. So what we want to try to do is spend the money once on these overlays so that we can take care of the streets that need the maintenance of those streets before they fall into disrepair. We want to catch them before they fall into disrepair. And you'll see that with El Bonita, for example, Kennedy Court, La Quinta, those streets are scheduled for more of a slurry seal type of work in 26, 27, because we want to, again, invest in the streets that we've just paved so that we don't find those falling into disrepair in the future.
So with that, if we amend, my understanding from the city clerk is that we have to reopen the public comment. My thought would be to move this forward with the addition of Oak and Hunt to get them on the list, the remaining part of Hunt, and then move this forward that way. Is there support for that? I'm seeing one nod. Okay. So if I can make that motion, but then we'll have to yes.
Mr. Mayor, prior to a motion, you need to reopen the public hearing, take public comment, and then close the public hearing.
Okay, so I will do that now. I will take open the public hearing, take public comment, see if there's public comment coming in.
And there is. Tracy, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Council, and I really appreciate your comments. I appreciate the comment on equity. I appreciate the comment that someone's ridden their bike on Hunt Avenue. I appreciate that you're recognizing you need to give some attention to the streets that get a heavy volume. And if this wasn't considered in the past, streets that get a high volume of traffic, it is a catch-22. I know you want to preserve the streets that are in good shape, but the streets that are failing that get a high amount of traffic, it's a heartbreaker. And I really would like the idea that you're going to be looking at this on a more regular basis and prioritizing those streets that are really failing. So thank you.
Thank you for the public comment. Is there any additional public comment?
There are no other hands raised, so it'd be appropriate now for you to close the public hearing.
Okay, so we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council. Is there anybody else that would like to make the motion? If not, I will make the motion. I'm seeing no hands, so I will make a motion to approve the recommended action with the amendment of adding Oak and the section of Hunt that is not on there.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor and Vice Mayor Doring, could you also clarify the years and segments in the motion?
The recommendation from the city manager on Oak was 26, 27. Okay. And then on Hunt, when it's currently scheduled for next year, I believe. So I would say the same year. I'm trying to scroll down to it.
So Hunt is 26, 27 as well.
Okay, so let's see if I'm looking. Yes, that's my thought to do it that way. And then if we can find a way to accelerate it, we do. Is that acceptable to the vice mayor if he's seconding?
No, I think the city manager needs to clarify the years. I don't think that's accurate.
It's actually 24, 25 when I look.
That's correct. 24, 25 for
With that in mind, I'll second.
And does that address the segment issue? Is that what?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, so Mayor Ellsworth,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doreen,
Yes.
Councilmember Chateau,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Okay, so with that, motion passes. And so why don't we take a break now, a 10-minute break, and come back at 8:30? We've been at this for a while, so if we check out for a minute and then come back in 10 minutes, we'll finish up. Okay, we've got folks coming back on here. Let's see if we've got everybody. I'll touch base with Cindy, make sure she can hear me. And we'll start seeing our council coming back on here. And our city attorney and our city managers here, and we're getting there with our council. Okay, so our council's back, our city manager, our city attorney, our city clerk. So we will proceed. We're at item 10.2. This is consideration and proposed approval of an urgency ordinance adding chapter 16.26 and chapter 17.114 to the St. Helena Municipal Code to implement SB 9. And this is Ms. DeRosa, our planning and building director.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Before I start, I want to acknowledge and thank the work of our city attorney, Mr. Walsh, for his work on preparing this urgency ordinance with not a lot of time. The legislation that was passed by the governor has been getting a lot of media attention lately. Tonight, we'll review that legislation and the regulations we're proposing to be in compliance with the new law. I also do have a brief PowerPoint that our city clerk, I think, is going to run for me that will just highlight some of the both what the law is and what our proposed ordinance includes.
Thank you, Mr. Rosa. And if I can just jump in for a moment, because we have a really extended agenda still, any places that we can look for some efficiency would be great. So thank you.
Of course. We can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So just in summary, what is Senate Bill 9 about? It started with the governor signing it September 16th, 2021. And there's two primary components. The reason why we're bringing the urgency ordinance is this statewide legislation is to be effective January 1st, 2022. And the two major components that you'll also see reflected in our urgency ordinance relates to, first, it's applies to a proposed housing development that contains no more than 2 residential units within a single family residential zone is to be considered ministerially without discretionary review or hearing if it meets the bill requirements. And the second component is that any lot in a single family residential zone may be split into 2 lots of roughly equivalent size with resulting lots as small as 1,200 square feet. And that's also without discretionary review or hearing. And that's also termed as an urban lot split. Next slide, please. And essentially the key requirements of Senate Bill 9, this is not everything, but the highlights are that I think are salient to understand is that it has to be located within a single family zoning district, and the development would not require demolishing or altering housing that is subject to a recorded covenant of ordinance or law that restricts rents to levels of affordable to persons and families of moderate, low, or very low income. Also, the development would not require the demolition or alteration of housing that has been occupied by a tenant in the last 3 years. It would also not demolish more than 25% of the existing exterior structural walls, not located within a historic district. And one of the important parts of this legislation is that it does allow cities to apply objective standards. Next slide, please. So how we have responded to this is basically drafting an ordinance that is responding to what are the key single family zones in our city that first of all this would apply to. So we have 4 zones identified: low density residential, low density residential 1A, our medium density residential zones, and our woodlands and watershed zones. And I do have a map in my presentation, and I'll just highlight that graphically for you. Also, there's specifications that it can't be allowed in a sensitive, dangerous, historic area. 2-unit projects are not allowed on a property that has been rented within the last 3 years. There is a minimum 2,400 square foot lot size for an urban lot split, and then a minimum of 1,200 square feet for each of those resulting lots. Each new lot must adjoin the right-of-way. Floor area ratio, lot coverage, height, and open space will be regulated by the underlying zoning, provided that the property owner must be able to build at least 2 primary units of at least 800 square feet. The setback standards are also regulated by the underlying zoning, except as necessary, again, to allow 2 units at 800 square foot each, but no less than 4 feet on your side and rear setbacks. The use also has restrictions. It's limited to residential only, no short-term rentals allowed. And parking, we may require 1 parking space for each new primary dwelling. We have left the option for it to be covered or uncovered, unless it qualifies for an exemption in the statute. Next slide, please. So again, this adds some additional detail on some of the ordinance requirements related to owner occupancy being required. The new construction must match other dwellings or dwellings on the property. We have setback restrictions that we've added to be imposed on if it's an upper story unenclosed landing, deck, or balcony. So that would help with privacy. And also to help with privacy, we have a requirement for evergreen landscape screening requirements between each dwelling and adjacent interior lots. There is a requirement for direct connection to utility service provider. A separate conveyance of dwelling units within a single lot would be prohibited. There would be a deed restriction clause, as noted here. And then also, because this would be ministerial, we are going to require that there be a notice of construction that the property owner would be required to give to all adjacent owners. Next slide, please. And just real quickly, geographically, now this map here obviously shows all the zoning districts, but if you look on the left side of the screen, there's the 4 districts. And so just to kind of navigate you where they are, so the LR is the yellow, the bright yellow color that you see there. And that's primarily located in our areas off of Crane, Grayson, and the Sylvaner Tract neighborhood. And then the LR1A area is primarily that blue striped shaded area on the west side of the city off of Spring Mountain Road. And then of course our MR, which is the orange area, the lighter orange color that's in the central area of the city on both sides of Highway 29 is obviously our biggest area. And then on the outer edges of the city, our woodlands and watershed zones are this light green minted color. And those, as you can see, are just, not many there's a breakdown of the parcels because I thought it would, the public and the council would be interested to know, well, exactly how many parcels. This is just the number of parcels. There may be additional restrictions because, for example, this number of parcels doesn't include some of the ones may actually be designated historic or have other restrictions. But it does, percentage-wise, this does make up 67% of all the parcels in the city. Next slide, please. And then on the objective standards, as I mentioned on the other slide, there are objective standards. However, there are additional single family residential objective standards in our draft zoning code that could further add clarity and we believe improve design outcomes. So our recommendation that's noted in the staff report is to do further review of those standards for incorporation into an amended urgency ordinance in early 2022. And this is also a very common practice I'm seeing with other cities that, since this is being, we haven't had a lot of time to respond. I think we're in a good position because unlike a lot of cities, we already have some draft standards. So it's just a matter of reviewing those in context for which ones make sense in the application of SB 9. Next slide, please. And the recommended action, because this is an urgency ordinance, it does require a 4/5 vote. Before I conclude my presentation, for the record, I did just want to bring to your attention, as I was doing my last review of the ordinance this afternoon, I did note alert Mr. Walsh that we do actually have 2 very minor typos, but I would like them to be corrected as part of the record. And so we need to amend section 16.26050 subsections. It's subsection J, 3, and then B, and the references, it should actually state that the reference should be subsection J, 3, and A. And then also in that same typo is in section 17.114.050 subsection F 3B, and it's the same change. So with the track changes, sometimes things don't carry over. And that concludes my presentation, and both Mr. Walsh and I are available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And we'll look to the council, then open the public hearing. And any initial comments, questions from council? I am seeing Councilmember Hardy.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick comment, really, for everyone's benefit, but it's aimed at our constituents, the members of the public. This is one example of a whole collection of new state law that is reducing our discretion with respect to housing projects, and more of what gets built in St. Helena will be approved on a ministerial basis. So I know it's already happening that residents are going to be surprised when structures go up next door and they didn't know about it and so on. I'm really delighted that this ordinance includes notice of construction. I'm wondering if that isn't something we can add elsewhere in our code where we're dealing with ministerial approvals so that we reduce the element of surprise. But a lot has happened in Sacramento, and it is going to affect when and if our residents have the opportunities to comment on what's going on next door. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, Councilmember Hardy, was there a question there at the end?
Really just a suggestion that we look for opportunities to incorporate a notice of construction wherever we're making this shift to a ministerial approval, or in effect, it's been made for us by the state legislature.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hardy. That's noted.
Any other council comment before I go to the public hearing? So seeing none, I will open the public hearing and look to our city clerk to see if we have any input from the community, the public.
I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, so with that, we'll bring it back to the council. And thank you for the report and the focus on this. and the work in terms of making sure that we're addressing this as SB 9 rolls forward here.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, we do have a hand raised.
Oh, we do. Okay. So let me go to the public hearing and we will take that public comment.
You can unmute yourself and address the council.
Hi, it's Julie Redden again. I just have a question. So does this sort of basically mean the city has no control over what anybody does on their property? We've seen this issues with Picasso. I know it says no short-term rentals, but I mean, does this mean I can build 2 other units on my property? And I mean, are we going to enforce this? Is this, I sort of had thought that this is more for urban areas that needed more housing. I know we need more housing here, low-income housing, but I think it's going to change the dynamics of neighborhoods. And I'm all for some of that because we do need more affordable housing, but are we going to have some control over this? Basically, is the question. Change neighborhoods, change. That's my question, I guess.
Thank you. Well, we'll put that to Ms. DeRosa in terms of a little clarification on where the limits of local control with things moving forward with SB 9. Just a little clarity on that.
Certainly. Yeah, that's a great question. And there is actually a lot of control in terms of where we are able to rely on our underlying zoning standards, such as maintaining 20-foot front setback standards, lot coverages. In the end, the legislation is very clear about saying we still have to be able to allow, an 800 square foot unit, for example. But we understand that this may densify certain lots, and there's importance to maintain privacy and respect property rights from that perspective. So we've built that in. And of course, it's not mentioned in my presentation, but all these projects will be subject to getting a building permit. And so under the building permit process, they have to go through a layer of a zoning review to make sure that they are meeting those setbacks and other standards. And then when we bring our next revision to this ordinance back in early 2022, we will have further refinements on objective standards such as plate heights for your first and second floor and step back. So I want to clarify that it's not just you can do whatever you want. It is prescriptive. I don't know if Mr. Walsh wants to add anything further to that.
I think that was very well said. I would emphasize that the purpose of this ordinance is to give us some parameters on which we can make our decisions. While they won't go before the planning commission or the city council. They give us guidance on what people can and cannot do. So it does place limits on what people can do on their unit. While they do have the opportunity to build 2 units on a single family lot now, and to split a single family lot into 2 separate lots. We did put this into place so that we have additional parameters to kind of to govern that and to address some of the concerns that the commenter raised. So that it's important to get this into place so that we can at least have those standards in place. Otherwise, we would only have the limits that are in the existing state law, which are very limited.
Thank you. So with that, we'll see if there's any additional public comments.
Response back.
I think we have a 4-minute limit on the questions. Do you have another question? And then.
Well, sort of. My question was, yeah, I guess if just people are worried that people are going to come in and buy homes and split their lots and be speculators, not just people who want to live here. So I guess that is the main concern of most of the people I know in St. Helena.
So in terms of just
and splitting lots and not doing it for maybe I'll rent out my second unit to a guy who works at a restaurant so he can afford to live here. So I guess that's most of people's concerns, is the speculators, not the people who will just put on an additional unit to have some affordable workers live in our community where they should be.
So if I could just, in terms of process, Mr. Rosa, if folks have those types of concerns and we can give some answers to how they can and where those can be addressed, where's your thought in terms of process? So when people have those questions about this and timing.
Yeah, I would recommend that we actually publish an FAQ sheet that we can put up on the planning page in early January. We're also, and of course, Ms. Redden is more than welcome to call me or email me, and we can have a more detailed conversation. But with the two things I was going to mention is, I think developing an FAQ sheet, and then parallel with that, we also need to develop applications that would clarify what, if someone can apply, making sure they meet all the requirements. So how does that sound for a response?
I think that's a good response, and I see Ms. Redden is still on, so hopefully she can make the connection with you, and then that FAQ sheet will also be helpful for community members who have those concerns. I'm seeing Councilmember Hall, who might have a thought here in terms of process, et cetera.
Thank you. Mr. Rose, I love all your recommendations there. I think it's important the community, takes a look at SB 9 if they're not very familiar with it. There's plenty of it out in the press today, and so just do a Google search, San Francisco neighborhoods, impacted by SB 9, and there's a lot of good stories there that provide a lot of the context around this and the issues facing local cities like ours.
Thank you. And I'm seeing that we have another public comment here in the public hearing. So if our city clerk can help dial that in for us.
Laura, you can unmute yourself and address the council.
Oh, I think we have a mute that's on. Mute is on for
Laura?
the caller.
Laura, I'm asking you to unmute yourself. Laura, please unmute yourself so you can address the council.
We're not seeing any movement from that red mute there. I'm wondering if she's talking and not knowing that we can't hear.
Okay, Laura, I'm gonna ask you to unmute yourself again.
Okay, well, did I see something move?
She put her hand down.
Okay, so
She just put her hand down.
okay. So with that, if we have no additional public comment, then we'll close the public hearing. We'll bring it back to the council. Is there a motion on this item?
I'll make the motion that we adopt the emergency ordinance.
And is there a second?
I'll second it
With the amendments, excuse me.
with amendments.
With amendments.
And we need a fourth.
And you're also adopting by title only and waiving further reading. Correct?
Yes, I'm looking where that says that in here, but yes.
Okay. Councilmember Shuto?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Hardy?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring?
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. Okay, very well. We have one more item under public hearings. That's 10.3, and this is consideration of a resolution to adopt the mitigated negative declaration for the R20-02 Mills Lane Storm Drain Improvements Project. And this item was noticed to be heard at the November 9th, 2021 regular city council meeting and was subsequently continued to the December 14th, 2021 regular city council meeting. and this item is being continued. Oh, I'm sorry. This is being continued again. Is that correct? I'm sorry if I started off on that. My apologies, folks.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
So that is the end of our public hearings. We'll move to old business. This is 11.1, and we're moving this one as well, is my understanding. Okay, so then we
That
will
is
move.
correct.
to-
This will be heard last.
Okay, so we will move to item 12.1 under new business. This is introduction and first reading of SB 1383 ordinance, repealing and recasting chapter 8.04 to title 8 of the St. Helena Municipal Code regarding solid waste collection and adoption of a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding with Upper Valley Waste Management Agency regarding implementation thereof, and authorize the city manager to execute the MOU on behalf of the city. And this is our city attorney, Mr. Walsh.
Excuse me, I'm going to recuse myself as my wife is employed at Upper Valley Disposal Services, and that company is referenced in this ordinance.
Okay, and so we will communicate with you when we're done with the item.
Thank you.
And I'm seeing our city clerk.
Yes. We are reaching 9 p.m., so I'm going to need to have a motion, a majority motion to extend to 9:30.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Councilor Chateau,
Yes.
Hardy,
yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. And so, Mr. Walsh, will you take us into this item 12.1?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Mayor. I'm going to keep my comments relatively brief, given the time. And if there's things that you need to cover, then we can do that through questions, I think. But in general terms, this is another item that we are implementing in light of state legislation. This had a little longer lead time than SB 9 and has been in the works for a while. But SB 1383 is a bill that was passed some time ago in order to limit short-lived climate pollutants. And what it's really focused on is trying to reduce the emission of methane from landfills in particular. And so the way that the bill seeks to do that is by reducing the amount of organic waste that is deposited into our landfills. It sets significant goals to reduce the amount of organic waste that gets deposited in the landfills. And there's a couple significant things that the ordinance or that the law requires and has required that local governments implement at the local level, and they're really focused around two things or three things. One is reducing a kind of requiring the separation of the waste streams so that organic waste is segregated and can be converted to compost rather than getting stuck in with other solid waste and causing further emission. The second primary thing that it does is that there's a lot of reporting and a lot of reporting requirements that are imposed on local government. And the third is that there is a requirement for diversion of food products that are generally deposited in a landfill from businesses and restaurants that have excess food products. It's intended to not only take those out of the landfill, but move them towards being used for food organizations that provide food to needy households. So as part of SB 1383, all local governments are required to adopt an ordinance unless they're exempt because they're very small. We have proposed an ordinance that's consistent with the requirements of SB 1383 here. And secondly, there are a number of implementation steps that they're required to do. What we are proposing here is that we enter into an MOU with Upper Valley Waste Management Agency to work on the majority of the implementation steps that have to be done for the city in this case, because given that they are responsible for our waste management, we think it's most efficient that they take on those responsibilities, and it'll ensure continuity between us and the other neighboring jurisdictions in the Upper Valley. So that's a basic summary. If you want me to get into detail of the provisions of the ordinance, that's fine, or I'm happy to answer any questions, but I do understand that we have additional items on the agenda tonight and why I want to allow time for everything.
Thank you. Are there any initial council comments or questions? I'm seeing none. I've got a few comments. I'll look to the, well, I'll start with a few comments here. I have some concerns with this. I know that there's a date here by which this is intended to be implemented, but I also know, recognize in here the staff report talking about a measure SB 619 that was put forward so that there's a little more time to look at this before any penalties, et cetera, would accrue. My concern is about fire risk and contamination risk in the Napa Valley, Napa County, Upper Napa Valley. When we looked at what changed in the agreement with what's coming in terms of garbage and waste, the agreement with the Upper Valley Waste Management Agency, the contract that extends to Upper Valley Disposal Service and Clover Flat Landfill, the service boundaries were removed for where we take in waste. So if we're trying to limit what's coming into our landfill, it's extraordinary to me at this point, just tracking the numbers from the Golder report that came out from the landfill. The landfill is now taking in roughly 6 times the amount of garbage from both in and out of the county, increasing the methane load, the trucking with the methane load, the climate impacts of that. But very concerning to me are the fire risks of, if we're talking about compost has landfills in general are inherently prone to fire, but compost as well. And these areas where they're being proposed to manage it are one is in a high fire tier area and one is right next to one. So I would like to see, before something like this goes forward, a fire risk analysis of what it's like when we're now taking in, on track to take in 6 times the amount of waste from in and out of county and processing it at these facilities, including the compost and what happens with the food waste. So those are my comments. I'm very uncomfortable passing something without looking at the fire risk. And I do see with 619, there may be a little margin of time. So I want to put that out there. And I'm seeing Councilmember Chateau with a hand up.
Yes, I would really like us to move forward on this tonight. And I actually wanted to see if there's council support to do the second reading and come back on the meeting on the 28th, just to do that and get it done, because the deadline is January 1st and all of the other cities and town have already passed this in county. We are the last ones. There's an incredible amount of work that's been done to get ready to do all of this work. That would be a huge burden on our city to go at it alone. So to me, it's really important that we honor that collaboration and work. And tonight on our agenda, the operation of Clover Flat is not on our agenda. That's controlled by the franchise agreement, which is already in place. Tonight, we're just talking about this ordinance to move forward on the state regulations for SB 1383. And I would really like us to get that job done tonight. The other thing I would say is that the only out of county waste that Clover Flat is receiving is not non-hazardous fire debris, which does not contain any significant level of organics. And so it doesn't contribute to the methane. And the other thing that's unique about Clover Flat is that they do have a methane capture system in place, which is unique. So when the organics, so actually when the methane is captured, then that is being used to power 800 homes as renewable energy.
Thank you for the comments. Are there other council comments before I open the public comment? And I'm looking to the city clerk. Are we seeing any?
There are no hands raised.
So coming back to the council then, again, I believe the fire risk, I'll close the public comment, bring it back. I believe the fire risk is really overriding the materials that are coming in. If the tonnage went up from historically 40,000 tons a year, now this year alone in the first 2 quarters was over 130,000 tons, there will be a significant methane increase. The methane piping systems themselves have fire risks. And I can refer anybody to Waste Advantage magazine, Waste Pro magazine, trade magazines that recognize the inherent fire risks. And so for me, I'm in favor of waiting and doing a fire risk analysis. I'm not sure where the rest of the council is. I'm not going to be available on the 28th. And so in terms of a meeting there, that's not something I'm available for. And we can sort of see where the rest of the council is. I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy.
I'm available on the 28th and I'm ready to make a motion anytime.
Okay, any input from Vice Mayor Doring?
I'm ready to make a decision.
Okay, if you're ready to make your motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we introduce and waive the first reading of the ordinance that's part of our packet. Said ordinance repealing and recasting Chapter 8.04 to Title 8 of the St. Helena Municipal Code regarding solid waste connection. And in this same motion, I include approval of the attached resolution approving a memorandum of understanding with Upper Valley Waste Management Agency regarding implementation of SB 1383 and authorizing the city manager to execute the MOU on behalf of the city.
And do we see a second?
What about the meeting on the 28th?
Let's do this motion and come back to that if we may.
Great, I'll second then.
And a roll call, please.
Councilmember Hardy,
Yes.
Duto,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
No, and want to make sure that my comments about fire risk are on the record, please. And so it looks like the motion passes. And so in terms of the 28th, process-wise, I guess I'll look to our city attorney. I will not be available for that meeting.
Yes, so that is a regular meeting date that we have scheduled for a regular meeting. I think the consensus of the council in general was that that would be canceled, but that can be changed to hold the meeting. The fact that the mayor is unavailable, I think we would want to make sure that there's a quorum available, but we can still hold a meeting even if some members are not available that evening.
So what is your suggestion in terms of moving forward?
Well, I think if they, so the meeting kind of by past consensus was that meeting was canceled. And if someone wants to make a motion to propose that we hold our regular meeting on the 28th, we could consider that now.
Okay.
I'll move that we hold our regular meeting on the 28th and keep it very short just for this one item.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Discussion.
Yes.
What's council's conclusion whether the meeting on the 28th, which I'm going to have a difficult time attending, is absolutely necessary as opposed to the first meeting in January, given your review of the extended deadlines?
Do not think it has an impact whether we approve it on the 28th. the first meeting in January from a legal point of view. The statute gave us additional time, and if we do adopt the ordinance at the first meeting in January with 30 days before it's effective, we will still have it adopted in time to meet the requirements with the grace period that we got through AB 619 that was passed later. So it's not a requirement. I know that the other communities have passed it, and there may be a community expectation, but I don't think it's legally required. And several other jurisdictions that we work for are kind of in the same boat that St. Helena is in.
Thank you.
So with that, is there a thought here on the motion?
My motion still stands.
And I believe it was seconded.
Roll call.
Yes.
Councilmember Chateau,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
No.
Mayor Ellsworth.
No.
Then I'll move that we bring it back at our first meeting in January.
Second.
Let's just say our first regular meeting in January. Thank you.
Second.
On. Councilmember Hardy,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Councilmember Chateau,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
And I will say no again with the note of my concerns about the fire risk. Okay, that looks like that passes. And so we'll now move to,
Wait, just 1 minute. I need to contact Councilmember Hall to rejoin.
and are we seeing Councilmember Hall coming on yet? Here he comes.
Yes, yes. City
Okay.
Manager Prestwich. Do you
City-
think we should forego 12.2 to hear the rest of the items on the agenda?
It's a council policy decision, but there's not a timing issue associated with the next item on the agenda if you'd like to move that to January 11th.
My thought is to support that idea so we can get into these final items and have a little time. Is that acceptable to council to move 12.2 to the January 11th, since it's not a timing issue on it?
I'm fine with that. That's the Parks and Rec update.
Yeah, and just wanting to make sure we have time for the other items.
Yeah, fine with me.
Okay. Very well. We'll continue that item 12.2. We'll move now to 12.3 and then 12.1. I have that in the correct order, I believe. So 12.3, that's the St. Helena City Council will now convening the Mr. Walsh, could you help me through the beginning of this and how we structure this?
Sure. So thank you, Mayor. So earlier in the meeting, you approved your a joint powers agreement to establish the St. Helena Financing Authority, and so we are now convening the first meeting of the Financing Authority. It's a joint meeting of the City Council and the Financing Authority. I think the clerk will note for the meetings that the membership of the board of the Financing Authority is the same as the City Council. So she'll note that you're all present, and we're conducting this as a joint meeting, and you have actions to take both in your capacity as the City Council and as the Financing Authority Board. And so with that, I think we can, that meeting is now open, and we can turn it over to Mr. Prestwich or Dr. Mitz to make the presentation.
Okay, I'll read the title here quickly, just to put the context out there. Authorizing a resolution of the City Council of the City of St. Helena approving one installment, sorry, I'm a little, installment sale financing to provide interim financing of wastewater system improvements, and 2 financing documents and related official actions, and authorizing a resolution of the Board of the St. Helena Financing Authority approving installment sale financing to provide interim financing of wastewater system improvements, and 2 financing documents and related official actions. And I'll hand this to Mr. Presswich.
And we'll be having our Assistant Admin Services Director, Mandy Kellogg, introduce this item.
Thank you. And as the mayor said, this item is related to the interim financing for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. And we have Ken Deeker here, the city's municipal advisor from Del Rio Advisors, to present this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kellogg. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Can you guys all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to do a brief presentation. I know we're a bit for time here, so I'll do my best to move through it. Let me share my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
Great. All right, so in August of 2021, August early this year, the city did receive a draft letter of conditions from the USDA for a loan not to exceed $9.362 million. The USDA loan is set up as a reimbursement loan. So basically they do require interim financing. That interim financing, along with other city resources contributed to the project, will be used to pay the project costs. The USDA loan will come back and reimburse those amounts to repay the interim financing. In August of 21, the city went out to RFP to 17 different lenders. The city requested an interim loan with final maturity date of October 1 of 2024, so just under 3 years, and that the city would consider both fixed rate and variable rate alternatives. The city did receive 4 valid responses as summarized on the next page. And on September 14th, we did brief the council on these items and receive some direction. We did receive proposals from Bank of the West for variable and fixed rate options, from CoBank for variable and fixed rate options, from First Foundation Bank and Western Alliance Bank for fixed rate options only. As was discussed at the September meeting with the council, Bank of the West is the preferred alternative. They had the lowest interest rate and the best terms. It was structured as 80%, so variable rate loan, structured 80% of 1 month LIBOR plus 55 basis points, estimated a current interest rate of 0.6825%, just over 0.5%. They would allow 2 draws per month and amounts not less than $500,000 each. The city will pay a commitment fee of 12.5 basis points on any undrawn balance, so that $9.4 million that we're going to borrow from them, you will pay a small commitment fee on that undrawn balance. And the interim loan may be prepaid at the end of each month at 100%, or basically there's no prepayment penalty on that. As the council is aware, variable rates do carry a certain amount of interest rate risk. We did calculate what we consider to be the break-even rate versus the best fixed rate alternative, and that would have to go to about 1.55% to be worse than the fixed rate alternative. And part of that is the fact the term of this loan is only for a period of 3 years. And the loan is expected to be repaid earlier, as soon as 12 to 18 months, as soon as the USDA reimbursements come in. So we don't expect the life of this loan to be for the full term of those 3 years. We did run an estimated fiscal impact. We discussed this at the last meeting. The all-in true interest cost, which includes all the cost of issuance and everything for the Bank of the West variable rate alternative, is estimated at 1.02%, so just over 1%. There are costs of issuance associated with this transaction. There's a bond counsel fee to prepare all the legal documents. There's a placement agent to help them to place the loan with the bank. The fee for my services, the bank does have a counsel fee that they're charging us, $20,000, and some miscellaneous costs in there. Those are regulatory filings and so on that we need to cover. Now, there has been a couple of changes since we posted this agenda item, so I want to be very clear to the council. Originally, we thought we would close this loan in 2021. But the USDA loan is not going to close until sometime next year. We're not going to be drawing on this interim financing until the first quarter of next year. And because that did carry over to 2022, the Bank of the West did send a revised term sheet. As stressed in your staff report, originally this loan was 80% of 1 month LIBOR. They now are proposing to use what's called the Secured Overnight Funding Rate, or SOFR for short. And I did discuss this in the staff report. 1 month LIBOR is being wielded out of the financing community as of June 30th of 2023. Most financial institutions are beginning to unwind any LIBOR positions and moving into this new SOFR. This did become effective in April of 2018. So the documents will no longer need the conversion language that complicated the documents. It's simply going to be a SOFR loan. Right now, I think 1 month LIBOR is at 0.09 and SOFR, which is the overnight rate, is at 0.05. So there's really not much difference right now in interest rate. They did lower the minimum draw amounts from $500,000 to $100,000, making it easier for the city to draw for project costs. They did eliminate the maximum of 2 draws per month. So again, giving the city a little bit more flexibility to draw down the money as needed to pay the contractor. And the commitment fee, instead of being paid quarterly, is now going to be paid semi-annually. Those were some changes that happened on a revised term sheet the city received after we posted this item to the agenda. I did do a quick comparison since 2018 of SOFR versus 1 month LIBOR. And except for that blip up in 2019, you can see that they pretty much model each other. So I think it's a very easy rate to convert to, instead of having to deal with 1 month LIBOR for a period of time and then possibly converting to SOFR. This will be strictly a SOFR loan going forward on a variable rate basis. The documents for you tonight is an installment sale agreement. And that was part of the reason that you formed the financing authority tonight, is you do have to have a document between the city and the St. Helena Financing Authority to make installment payments. There's an assignment agreement that assigns the rights to the Bank of the West, who's the proposed lender, and a supplemental agreement which lays out a lot of details between the financing authority, St. Helena, the city, and the Bank of the West. So with that, staff does recommend approval of both the city council action tonight and that of the financing authority. To be clear, in the resolution, the expected interim loan amount is at $9,492,000, but we do have to set a not to exceed amount in the resolution, and that was set at $10 million. But we do expect to only borrow the $9,492,000, which will pay back, or which will basically fund the $9,362,000 of the USDA loan and the cost of issuance. And with that, myself, Ms. Kellogg, Ms. Mitz, and we do have Jones Hall available with us tonight as bond counsel, and we do have some people from Brandis Tallman as the placement agent, should the council have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Deeker, for the report, and thank you also to our finance staff for all the work on this. A very significant project, and seeing it come forward and getting the pieces in place is tremendous. So thank you. I'll go initially to council, and then we'll open it up for public comment. And I'm having a little trouble on my screen seeing everybody. I'm seeing the. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
So are there any initial comments before I open public comment? I'm seeing none, so I'm going to go to public comment. And what I will say is that I know that Mr. Rosenbrand has been waiting patiently to speak. And I'm seeing Councilmember Hall. Let me just make the comment for Mr. Rosenbrand that I think the item that he wants to speak on is the next item about the awarding of the contract. This is about the financial side. So I just wanted to make that note. And I'm going to go to Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Deeker. What drives the variability in the SOFR? Why does it seem to bounce around so much?
I think part of it is it's a relatively new index or overnight rate. I did do some additional research on it. It is really based on larger transactions, and it's an overnight rate. 1 month LIBOR has a longer tenor, and so I think it's a little bit less variable. But again, it's at a lower rate because it is an overnight rate versus, say, a 1 month future rate.
Okay. And do you see anything within the term of this loan that obviously it's variable that might radically change our current levels?
There are risks. There's no doubt about it. I think that the Fed has indicated that they're going to taper beginning this month and through March, and then potentially start raising Fed funds rate up to as high as 2.25% to 2.5%. That seems to be the consensus, but nobody knows for sure. I think we'll find out a little bit later this week from the Fed. So yes, there are some short-term interest rate risks. There's no doubt about it as a variable rate loan. But we did look at the fixed rate option which was the best fixed rate option that was proposed by Bank of the West. The problem with that is that we would have to draw all the money upon closing, and the city would have to sit on it, and we'd have to pay interest on that money for the entire period of time. And so the variable rate option was less costly in that respect. And it being a short-term rate, we felt like even if it did go up, we'd probably be better off than that 1.55% break-even rate.
Okay, and relative to the fixed rate, that sounds like good analysis. What about relative to the city's ability to pay on the assumption rates do increase?
Well, there is room in the wastewater enterprise fund, right? I mean, it's tight. There's no doubt about it. The city is contributing a significant amount of resources to complete the project. Unfortunately, the USDA loan was only for $9.362 million on a $14 million plus. I know you're dealing with that item next on the agenda. So there's a significant amount of resources being put to this. I will tell you that if short-term rates do go up, there is a bit of a natural hedge, because any of the wastewater funds would also go up because the investment rate on those funds would also go up. So there is a bit of a natural hedge against a variable rate.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Additional council comments or questions? I'm seeing our city clerk.
At this point, we need to make a motion by unanimous motion to move beyond 9:30.
Can we get a motion to add an additional 15 minutes and go to 9:45?
So moved.
And is there a second?
There is.
And a roll call, please.
Councilmember Hall,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Chateau,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Very well. So thank you. And I will look to the public and have our city clerk look to the public to see if we have any public comment. And I'm seeing none. Cindy?
There's no
Okay,
hands
so
raised.
I'll bring it back to the council. I'll close the public comment. I'll look for any additional council comments or questions and entertain a motion on the recommended action.
I'll move approval of the recommended action. Both points, I can read them out if needed. Okay.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Councilmember Chateau,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Councilmember Hardy,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. And again, we're trying to move through items, but I do want to take a moment and just recognize the significance of this project and everybody's work getting it to this point. So thank you, everybody, for this part of it, this phase of it. Very much appreciated.
You've all earned your fee by staying this late.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we'll move to our final item here, and this is circling back on item 12.1. And this, I'm sorry, 12 point, I'm sorry.
11.1.
11.1, there we go. This is consideration and adoption of a resolution 1 awarding the WWTP Phase 1 upgrades capital improvement project S52 to Thompson Builders in the amount of $14,888,590. 2, authorizing the city manager to execute the construction contract with Thompson Builders. And 3, authorizing the director of public works to approve change orders not to exceed 10% of the contract amount. And we have Martin Beltran is listed here. Is he with us this evening to present?
I'll take this item, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, great. Thank you, Mr. Rincon.
Yeah, so this is, I guess, a tremendous turning point for the city. Obviously, we're addressing many infrastructure items, as you can imagine, but this one's a significant one. We're getting rid of our old wastewater treatment plant, not in wholesale, but getting rid of it and advancing it to an advanced treatment plant, whereby we will be making another resource available to the city for reuse, water reuse. So it has a double thing of addressing the cease and desist order that was put up by the Regional Water Quality Control Board. But secondly, we're getting a resource out of it as well. So I think it's a very positive project for the city. It's long overdue, and we're happy to start the construction phase at this point. Obviously, everyone's kind of tired of getting late. So I do have Curtis Lamb here to answer any questions we may have, but we're looking at a pretty aggressive schedule to get this thing completed by mid-2023. So we're looking at 18 months approximately for construction, issuing a notice to proceed to the contractor by mid-January. And that's assuming that we can get everything done before that. But I'd be happy to answer any questions. Like, again, this thanks to our project engineer, Curtis Lamb. He's here also to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rincon, and thank you, Mr. Lamb, and thank you to Thompson Builders and welcome to being part of our what we're doing here and taking on this project. Recognizing just a milestone achievement in terms of getting to this point. We still have work to do, but we've gotten things teed up now. Are there any initial council comments or questions? I know there's a little bit of public comment, and wanting to make sure that that any sort of in the neighborhood area, making sure as we move forward with this project that we're working with neighbors to make sure that that any issues we've got a good process for dealing with that. So first, we'll open it up to council and see if there's any questions, comments, and I'm seeing our Vice Mayor Doring.
Just a question with respect to how this is phrased as phase one. And I don't fully understand what other phases there are. And in conjunction with that question, were there any parts of the scope of work that were eliminated over the last several months or postponed or what have you because of the funding issues we had? And if so, what are they?
Well, in terms of phasing, Vice Mayor, the second phase of this project is, of course, the distribution of the treated wastewater, treated effluent, the Title 22 water. So that's the next phase, and we have yet to get into the design phase on that one. So I believe that's the second phase of this entire project, is to make that resource, get it distributed and into use. And then Curtis, perhaps you can address the items that we kind of engineered a little bit for bringing the cost down.
Sure. My name is Curtis Lamb. I'm with Hyder Science Engineers. We're the engineer for the project. We removed a few items from the construction contract, including a standby generator, some of the return pump stations that pump from the downstream ponds back to the main pond that we're using as the source of water for our plant. The main reason for doing that was to reduce the capital cost for the project, for what was in this construction project. The city's also looking into obtaining funding from other sources to help fund some of that work, and that process is ongoing.
Thank
How
you.
about the administrative offices? Is that still going forward? A new building for administration at the plant?
That's correct. There will be a new administrative building. It's a temporary building, unfortunately. It's not it's going to be a prefabricated building set there on site, and it's absolutely necessary.
Thank you.
And then something that if down the road, a more permanent installation, that would come with a different set of funding, et cetera. But at least we have this temporary administrative site planned.
Yeah, I've been in these temporary buildings for many years beyond their useful life. So we'll cross that bridge when we have to. But yes, you're absolutely right.
Okay, thank you. And I see Councilmember Hall.
Just following on the Vice Mayor's comments with regard to scope, I just wanted to make sure I understood Our CIP talks about sludge removal. And the project itself, if I can find it again, references, what is it? Packaged sludge dewatering facility. Are those the same thing, or are you able to manage the sludge issue effectively?
Curtis, when you want to go ahead and address that?
So the project as proposed includes a dewatering system, which basically takes the sludge and thickens it and dewaters, removes the water from the solids, and allows the city to haul what's called dewatered sludge to a landfill for disposal. I believe that the removal of sludge is basically from the ponds that are there now. And that is something that can happen with this facility as the plant operates without the need to have all the ponds in operation at all times.
Thank you. I'm seeing Councilmember Chateau.
Just a quick clarifying question. Will this phase one give us the ability to get recycled water out for irrigation once the purple pipe is in there, or is that phase two?
That's essentially phase two, Councilmember Chateau. Phase two is addressing distributing the purple pipe, as you said, throughout the city and getting it into irrigation uses.
But does this phase one include the ability to process that water once we have the pipes that can connect it?
Yes, the water will be processed to that higher standard, and so it'll be ready for a reuse.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, and then I see Councilmember Hardy, but so the water will be available if we don't have the piping, it could be available for trucking or distribution some other way until we have the piping.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy.
Thank you. At what point have we, in this process, will we meet all of the requirements of the cease and desist order from the regional board?
Curtis, I know you've been talking to regional board about that, so why don't you come up with a quick answer?
The regional board has already issued a new discharge permit to the city. It's in effect right now. And when we construct this phase one project, we expect that this new treatment plant will be able to meet all of the effluent water quality limitations that were in, that are in the new permit. And those cease and desist limitations will be null and void basically after this project is constructed.
So then, in what manner does one confirm that the constructed plant is consistent with the waste discharge requirements of the new order?
You would basically confirm it by measuring the performance of the plant, how well it removes solids, removes BOD. And so there would basically be water quality testing to confirm that.
So that plays out through the reporting requirements that are part of the WDR.
Correct. And we also are mandating some certain performance guarantees for the process that is being put in. And so we'll be working with the vendor who's supplying the process for the wastewater treatment plant to make sure that the plant meets all of our effluent water quality requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to open public comment. If there are no other council comments at this point, I'll look to the public, and I know we have at least one person who's been waiting. And Cindy, are you seeing that hand?
Yes. Ron, I'm allowing you to unmute yourself and address the council.
Hi, thank you, Council and Mayor. My name is Ron Rosenbrand. My wife, Jackie, and I own the property and the house directly adjacent to the St. Helena wastewater treatment plant. We wanted to express our concerns regarding the new construction that is scheduled to take place in 2022 at the treatment plant. We are concerned about the potential unsightliness of the new equipment from our house. We are very thankful that an 8-foot high sound wall will be constructed near our property line as a sound barrier. We respectfully request that the sound wall be constructed early in this project to help minimize construction noise, and that all of the 20-foot olive trees at the property line are left where they are and not removed. The olive trees make a great visual barrier between our house and the new equipment to be installed. Related to the trees, approximately 6 years ago, 13 trees were removed by the city and were supposed to be replanted, and that never happened, resulting in very unsightly views from our house on the junkyard at the city treatment plant. Therefore, we respectfully request that the olive trees are not removed. Thank you for the opportunity to express these concerns.
Thank you for the public comment, and we'll see if there's any additional public comment.
I'm seeing none.
Okay, I'll bring it back and close public comment. I wanted to, I spoke with Mr. Rosenbrand last week. There were concerns regarding the trees and wanting to look at in the past what had been the city had committed to, wanting to make sure that gets done. The sound wall, also wanting to make sure the speeds during construction, the speed of the workers and the trucks was consistent with the neighborhood. Is there a way to meet with the construction manager and the neighbors to sort of come up with a plan that everybody can be satisfied with as we get started? I think there's, from my understanding, complete support of the project, just wanting to make sure that we tie in with the neighbors to make sure their concerns are addressed. And I'll look to our city manager to get a thought on that. Or I can look to Mr. Rincon.
Yeah, okay, I can address that. We will have a pre-construction meeting. We will lay out some of the concerns with the neighbor, of course, during that. We will actually introduce the neighbor to the superintendent, project site superintendent. So the construction manager will know who the neighbor is. We will address the concerns. Essentially, once the contractor has site control, we can't tell them how to schedule the work. They need to do that themselves. Again, we can only emphasize that good neighbor policy, and I'm sure they'll be very concerned about that as well.
Okay, well, thank you. And so that'll come forward as we go forward, and we'll keep an eye on that, and we really appreciate it. Is there any other council comment or question? I'll entertain a motion here. Once again, with deep gratitude, want to thank everybody for pushing this forward and getting it here. I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say I did also meet with Ron and Jackie out at the site, and listening to their concerns about screening in particular. It did occur to me that if there were a private project of this order of magnitude, or even some much smaller next door, we would undoubtedly require screening should that project be subject to discretionary approval. And I really think it's important for the city to show the same consideration for neighbors that we require private developers to do. We have a pretty consistent track record in that regard. So I'm looking for some clear commitment on the city's part to following through with screening consistent with the neighbors' concerns. And I think they've made it about as simple and easy as they could. They're looking for preservation of the trees that are in place, or else relocation of them to their side of the property line, and they're looking for replanting of trees previously removed per earlier assurances from the city. So I think that is the right thing to do, and probably no more than and perhaps less than we would expect from a private developer on that property.
Can an amendment in terms of looking at the recommended action, I'm certainly seeing a motion in terms of time, but is this something that can be put on top of the recommended action in terms of engagement with the neighbor, in terms of screening and that commitment?
I'd be satisfied if it were something that could come back after staff has had an opportunity to think it through. I just want to be sure we don't drop the ball, but I'm happy to hear from Mr. Rincon on this.
Yeah, I think contractually, I mean, Curtis, what's been your experience? My experience with contractors, for the most part, is that they're very, very eager to keep the neighbors happy. They'll go out of their way to make the neighbors, not complain. But I see our city attorney has some opinion on this as well.
I just wanted to make the comment that I think if we want to address that, we should do it through a separate action. It doesn't necessarily, it could be at this meeting where we give direction to staff to a certain, on a certain issue, but the contract, it kind of is what it is. It was what we bid. But if we want to do something different, direct staff to look into this, we can do it. I just want to make sure that we segregate that from the action on the construction contract.
Okay, Cindy, in terms of time, did we get another 15 minutes or do we have to vote again here?
Whatever you'd like to do.
Ethan, are we okay to continue until we get this motion pushed forward?
Well, if there's a motion on the table, you can vote on it, but
I'll make a motion. I move that we take the recommended action.
With direction to look into the screening issues.
Yes,
Later.
absolutely. With that
I'll
direction.
second that
Thank you.
motion.
Councilmember Chateau,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Councilmember Hall,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes, and again, thank you, everybody. We don't have a lot of time, but want to just take a deep gratitude for getting this project to this point. If there's nothing else, I want to wish everybody a happy holiday. Thanks again for all the great work this past year, and we'll be reconvening as we go. So thank you, everybody, very, very much.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next week.
See you soon.